discussing, saying who we are and why we're here.
Sean Brissett. Both my kids went through the school system. My wife's been teaching up there for 30 years, lifelong resident. I definitely think we should be bringing back the resident trooper. I also think that it will tie in nice with the school. And so I obviously wanted to get involved in this committee. I previously sat on our Board of Education. So.
Nadine Williams Edwards. My interest here, I kind of initiated this conversation, I think, after attending the security meeting that Melinda and Greg put together for the parents. I'm a grandmother of children in this school. And my interest in this is that I'm really concerned. I understand that we have a good safety program in play. And I've been, not taking it. It's a great program, but I'm very concerned. I've done a lot of research and I followed all of the school shootings that we've had in the country so far. For some reason, I've done a lot of research on it. And I really just went to Amy and to the Board of Ed and said, I really would like to move this forward and I don't know how to do this. I don't know what the navigation is and who's the chicken and who's the egg and how do we start this conversation here. Kind of went around a little bit about it in regard to, the need for a resident trooper to be able to have a school resource officer, an SRO. I'm of the opinion, and I'd like to have the conversation. When we went to the Board of Ed last month, we agreed that we would form a committee, or Amy said that she would head up a committee, and that we'd look at all the options and not go straight to a resident state trooper, because I don't know all the answers yet. I'm interested in learning, but I'm of the opinion that the interest in this town and the appetite for a resident state trooper, I get mixed messages. I hear from some people that they really want it, and I hear from others that they really don't. And I'm concerned that if we go straight to that, and I don't know, I'd like to do the right research so that we know if an SRO is the right way, because in my opinion, the Board of Ed is responsible for the safety of the kids, and a state trooper is a need that the town has. So if there's two things going on, I just don't want it to be lost in the sauce is where I'm at. And if we go to the town and, and this goes to referendum and we try to get money for a resident state trooper and the people that don't want that, then we're going to lose it for the kids. And I want to make sure that we understand what we're asking for and what the options are. And not to take up all the time, but I just want to share with all of you where I've been so far with this research, and that my understanding is, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, and I know that I did get a lot of information from Lieutenant Haglund to help me on my research, and it really boils down to, if my research is right and what I've learned from Lieutenant is that it really sits with the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed is really the deciding factor before we can do anything. And the Board of Ed says yes or no if we want this in our school. And that's what I understand today. And I'm of the opinion, what I know so far, that I want to have a conversation about a school resource officer, because my conversation so far is that we'd be more successful potentially with that ask for the budgeting of this. And that may be correct or incorrect, but having an officer at the school or a resource officer during school hours is a different ask than asking for the Board of Ed to approve or to us to, put this together with this resident state trooper. So I'll just leave it at that. That's where I'm at.
Mr. and Mrs. Warner, would you like to join us at the table? No? Okay. All right. Is there anything you'd like to share? It's a completely ad hoc committee, so you're welcome at any point. So please feel free to join in. Mr. Darcy.
Hi, good evening. Mike Darcy. I'm a homeowner here in town. I've lived in town for 30 plus years. Raised my son in this town, who graduated from public schools. I'm fairly recently retired, 32-year veteran of the state police. I retired as a rank of major. But the majority of my career was spent in this part of the state. I worked at Troop D for 10 years. I commanded Troop D for 3 years. I served in a variety of command roles. I also was a resident trooper for 5 years in another part of the state. So I'm pretty familiar with the program. But I will tell you upfront, I'm coming into this very much with an open mind. I'm certainly familiar with the resident trooper program. I am also have a decent familiarity with the model that they presently have at Woodstock Academy, which is a sort of a quasi, some of the school security folks there are armed, some aren't, and there is not a resident trooper in Woodstock. So I know, and that seems to be working, so I know that can work as well. So again, I have despite my state police background, I'm coming into this with very much an open mind. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Gillard?
Yes, my name is Larry Gillott. I've lived in this town since I got married, long time. I live in Putnam. I also was a state police officer, and I had 27 years, 10 years at Troop B, and 17 years at SOC. Living here, I was, when they had the police officers here, the police officer here in town, everything was going pretty good. We had a good time with it, but then it just went away, and part of it, at that time, I was out of state police. I was on this finance board. I was still wanted the police officer to stay here, but the people who are not here today, right, it was put out, right, are the people that you got to worry about when you put it out, because they're the ones that paying the taxes, and that's what happened the last time.
Right.
And so I understand, and I'm for it. Not only, I'm in for it, I'm in for when I'm back, take the whole town. Because if you have one just for that, something happens outside and he can't get out there, we're gonna be, the policeman said, well, why weren't you there? So if you're gonna go that way, go back to what we had before. Take it from me, not because I'm a cop or was a cop. My wife was, when I was a cop, right? She was a runner, and she was attacked. My house was broken. The trooper that was here was there in just a few minutes for both things. And we were able to get these people that did what they did. That's just for me, but I also work this whole town. So I know when it can be good, and I know when it can be bad. And things have changed since I've been off of there. Things are a lot different, how you command it. But I'm for this. I mean, just from listening and hearing of just in the last few weeks of what was going on, of what went on up there.
Yeah.
It's better to have somebody else. My whole thing is also, as you know, it's not the usual schoolhouse. Okay, it's put together and not like the towns around us. There's a high school here, that sent them school and so on. So, and it's not easy. I walked that whole place. I'm saying, whoever gets the job, whoever does it, it's very hard. How many doors are there?
68 exterior doors.
Exterior doors. And if somebody knows how to get in and how to get into the other room, and the other room, and the other room, it's not easy. It's not gonna be an easy job if something. Thank God, what's happened so far up there that I know of is that it happened prior to school opening on one, and then one that happened inside. Maybe there are more, but I know. And so I am, I'm not afraid to say it, I am for something. But going back to police officer just to be for here, right? I know there was not, talk about putting a space in the school itself, right?
Potentially.
Okay. For the office then? We're gonna back the town and have a police officer supposedly for the town. Very easy that he's there, something happens that could be taken care of. You're gonna be using him in the school when in fact he has the whole town.
And full disclosure, you are a member of the Board of Finance as well.
Yes, I am.
Still,
Board of Finance.
all right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Granado. I am currently the principal at Thompson Middle School. Here to support the community.
And it was important. I had asked Melinda
Yeah.
just 2 days ago and said, can we get a teacher or an administrator, somebody that represents that part of the
Absolutely.
school? So thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
I appreciate it. Mr. Gillot, the other Mr. Gillot.
Greg Gillott, retired last September from corrections, a little shy of 26 years, had multiple roles. Department, learned a lot. Building security, tactical end of it more so. Graduate from Thompson Public Schools. Enjoyed my time there, came back last September, just in a small part-time role. And then Melinda and her team hired me as the security coordinator. It's a very, very complex structure. It's a massive compound. And the exterior is easy, but there is 68 exterior doors. And pretty much everything's all windows. Right now, people have asked me my opinion, and my opinion is, I don't have the luxury to think about that right now, because A, I don't have that tool in the toolbox. And my opinion is, I have to defend the building from the outside in. So most of our the individuals that work alongside me, my main focus is for them on the exterior of the perimeter as much as possible. In the event they do see something suspicious, by them being outside more than inside, can close that reaction time from the state police, which in turn results in mitigating limit life. So my take on this I would be more apt to go with the resident trooper route, and then maybe later on down the road, if there is funding for it, to attach an SRO. Now, I don't really understand that aspect of it. Maybe you could clarify how that would work. But one SRO isn't going to do it. You need one for evenings. And I think most people think that the school closes at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 3:30. Is after rec school programs, cheerleading, outside cheerleading programs. There are concerts, there are ball games, inside and out. There's a lot of different activities. There's building committee meetings. There is basketball practice. There are rec practice. There are rec basketball practices now going to be 3 days a week. From 5, we were able to cut it down to 3 days a week. To fit our budget. They worked well with us on that, with Melinda and myself and Bill Birch, facility manager. And then there's Saturdays. So one resource officer, in my opinion, is not going to solve the problem. You still need an individual up there for evening because there's just as much activity. And if anyone puts that, downplays the evening part of it, in my opinion, is saying that the life on second shift or evening shift is less valuable than those that are there during the day. And I don't agree with that. So, but in turn with that comes staffing. Both individuals might be on vacation, one might be sick, one might have gotten injured on the job. Now you need a backup. So at least two more bodies. And with that, the school resource officer, they're armed. There's ballistic vests. You want to get them at least a level 2 is the soft body armor one. You want at least a level 3, 3A, or a level 4. Those are expensive. Those can run anywhere between a range of $900 to $1,000. Not to mention their weapon platform that those individuals choose to buy. You got to store them. Where are you going to store them? In the school. So there's a lot of different. It's a lot more difficult than just hiring an individual and assigning them up there with a weapon. There's trainings that's involved. Me personally, I would send them to some type of tactical training. If you just go with the plain SRO route. Is it going to work? Possibly. You got to catch lightning in a bottle. One individual is not going to stop death with an individual with a high-powered rifle, multiple rounds and multiple magazines, as we all read and have read about past school shootings. Some of the reports are pretty in-depth and pretty interesting to read. But right now we have nothing. And nothing to get to something costs money. And that's the biggest sell. And right now in this town, I think, in my personal opinion, it's going to be a tough sell. But for me, at this point in time, I don't have the luxury of thinking about that because I can't. Fortunately enough, we had an incident, and I say fortunately because it was a small test of what could have happened. But Lieutenant Haglin's troops down there reacted quickly in a timely fashion and threw together an amazing action plan. And I don't know where he got those individuals from third or first shift or guys from days off. I don't know. But within a 23-minute period that I had and Melinda had to make a decision, they were there in ample time. And I am not going to lie, at that time of day, we were kind of lucky maybe, but the response was kind of overwhelming for me. And it was amazing to see. And I like I told Sergeant Cody and I texted Master Sergeant Miller that you guys did an amazing job, and it was quick. But right now, I don't know what the feel is for the town. I'm not in this town anymore, so I'm not out there talking. Come to work in town, stop by my father's house every once in a while on my way home, and I'm out the door. And so I don't know what the feelers are out there, but I would hope that this is an opportunity for the town to strike when the iron's hot here, because it is hot out there for schools. There's a lot of activities in a lot of schools. So that would be my selling point on either way you go with that, on how you're going to approach it. But I would sell it that way, that it's time to bring something back here. That's it, all I have right now.
Okay, Steve Benoit, been the emergency management director here for 21 years on the fire department, one of them for 37. Retired first sergeant of the National Guard. We need security in this town. That's it, resident trooper. I don't have anybody at school anymore. Son's gone, graduated from there. But we need protection in this town, some public safety, which we haven't had for years. And I've talked to people about it, and they always say to me, well, nothing's gonna happen here. Well, that doesn't cut it. It can happen anywhere. And people think this is a small town, nothing can happen here. Well, the other towns are small too, a lot of them. We really need some help here. You know, it'd be great to have a trooper just, you know, something goes on, you can just even pick his brain a little bit. And now, can't, we have nothing. We have Greg up to school, which does a great job up there. It said the school is enormous. And you get somebody up there that doesn't know the school, they will get lost in it. My big fear is at night, having a basketball game or something. They get everybody out, they close the school. I'll say some fool hid somewhere with something until morning. I mean, then they see it in the morning, and see it on camera, trooper could go up there. You know, that's, I just work in the mental health field, so I know how a lot of these people think, unfortunately, you know. And I really think we need a trooper. Town.
Good evening. My name is Eric Haglund. I'm currently the commanding officer at Troop D in Danielson. I'll do my best to answer the questions that I can tonight and otherwise get information to answer the ones that we can't. Help you bridge the gap on some information here and how you can best decide the course of action for you.
Thank you.
Melinda Smith, Superintendent here in Thompson. Lieutenant Haglund and his team has been very responsive since I've been superintendent. My first week on the job 6 years ago, I asked to meet with the chief of police because I came from a district where I had a lot of, police and fire support. And I remember Bill Birch laughing at me and saying, no, we don't have that. And I said, okay, well, whoever your local law enforcement is. And he said, no, you don't understand. There isn't here. And that feeling of having the carpet pulled out from underneath you, thinking, oh my goodness, who are we going to rely on? We have had the good fortune of having a good partnership with Troop D. And anytime I call for the dog searches, or when Greg makes a contact with Sergeant Cody, they're responsive. I was really happy to see the response time last week. Troop D is on our facility. What was the percentage you figured out today? 6 point. So every 6.5 days, we're having a call up at the campus. Most recently, almost every day, for whatever the issue is. And we're taking a lot of Troop D's time because we're having to have law enforcement intervention for some of the stuff that's happening up at the campus. So if you ask me, I'm going to always want the Cadillac version of everything, right? But the reality here is whatever the community decides. I agree with Steve. It was Steve and I who went out and petitioned to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance when we actually put in the security team. And it was the Board of Ed who met with the Woodstock Academy folks and figured out how can we do this with a small budget? So we at least have a security team. They are unarmed, but they spend a good deal of their time watching the perimeter of the building because there are 68 ways in. And so I'm grateful for that support. But the next level of support, whatever it comes, whether it's an SRO or if it's a state trooper, that next level of support would be very welcome. So that's my 2 cents.
Thomas, you just joined the meeting. Do you want to introduce yourself? We're still going around the table, introducing everybody that's in the meeting. And I know you were one of the concerned parents. Please share.
Yes, I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person today. Something came up last minute with my mom having to go to the hospital. But my name's Thomas Finney. I moved to Connecticut last year, and I bought a house here over on Bellerose Street, and I have a 4th grader attending school at this time.
Thank you for coming into the meeting tonight. And lastly, I'm Amy St. Ange. I'm the first selectman here in Thompson. I was approached by Nadine, I would say. I feel like other parents too. But we know that several of the towns nearby us have all instituted some type of armed security at the schools. So that became a concern, is why can't it be Thompson? One of the hoops or one of the obstacles that we have to get over is the public, because ultimately the public's going to have to approve whatever direction we go in. I don't believe there's too big of a price tag to make sure our kids and our community is safe. So, but we do have to get voter approval. So I think Lieutenant, or can I call you Eric? I think Eric will be able to share with us the cost some of the options that are at our disposal right now through the Connecticut State Police. And I know you're very familiar as well with, oh, Bill's here, with Woodstock Academy and how they're set up, because you shared that with me yesterday. So at this time, I'd like to just turn it over to Eric so that he can just share what the options are and what the cost might be for this, for our community.
So I think at the most basic level, right, it's already kind of been talked about. There's kind of two different avenues you can go. You can go into an armed security route, or you can go into a resident trooper direction, right? I'm not aware of any program in the state where a resident trooper is assigned specifically as an SRO, but only as an SRO. With the exception of our tech schools, right? Which, but they're state tech schools, so it's a little bit of a different model. So the idea of, and I don't think anybody's necessarily mentioned that, but just to clarify, there's not really a program in place where you would hire a state trooper to only be an SRO. Or you could hire a state trooper to be your resident trooper, and they could be a dedicated SRO. And then in the off season, something else might have to, be done with their schedule and how they would work, which, like we talked about, it might be a little of an awkward sell to the community, because 7/10 of the year they might be at school, but then depending on what's happening over the summertime, they might also need to be at the school. So did you get a resident trooper out of that package? Not necessarily. You've got you've essentially got yourself a bona fide school resource officer. So the Woodstock Academy model is a little bit different, where they're using what you already have in place, a security team, but then using, armed security, much like, any facility that has armed security, they go through that licensing process to be permitted. I'm not familiar on the insurance side of that, how that would work for a community, and who carries that sort of liability insurance for somebody. That was always one of the questions I didn't quite understand with the Woodstock Academy, is how they insure that, and is just that whole model, that there's some liability stuff there that I don't completely understand. But on the resident trooper side of things, there's a lot of different avenues that you can look at. Obviously, you can have somebody who's strictly a resident trooper in town and available to respond to calls at the school, right? You as a community can say we would like them to work a Monday through Friday schedule, so that they're always working, or at least always scheduled to work that Monday through Friday day shift where school would be in session, right? So if there's an incident at the school, they're available to respond. The other side of that is you work our traditional rotation schedule, where they work a 5 and 3 rotation, where they're on for 5 days and off for 3 days. And they try to be present at the schools as much as possible during those day shift, weekdays schedules, right? Then on the weekends are still available for other things that are going on in the town, that might be of interest. I know in Brooklyn, what we've done is the resident trooper has set up an office in the school. So the benefit to that is you're typically putting them up in a town building somewhere in the community. Well, if they're going to go in and work there, if they're going to go in the morning and do some paperwork or do whatever they have to do, some follow-up, and they're present every day at the school, that's visual presence. That's hard to beat. If they're there and something happens at the school, they're already there. If they get pulled away for something in the community, well, they're still in town. They haven't left the community. And if they're already on school property and an incident occurs and they're involved in something and something else happens in the town, there's an accident, on the other end of town, well, the troop's going to pick up the coverage for that. The trooper is never going to leave because they're already dealing with something out in school. So there's a lot of different kind of hybrids that you can look at. The biggest thing is just the contractually on our end, right? Schedules can be changed. There's just certain time limits that they have to be changed, and we can't, like any other employee, just say next week we're going to do something different. Traditionally, what we see, especially when it's one resident trooper or a couple of resident troopers in a community, the relationship gets formed with the town where it's a win-win, right? There's a little bit of flexibility in there for the trooper, because if something comes up and they need to modify their hours, the town usually is receptive to that, because at the same time when the town says, hey, can you shift your schedule for the big fundraiser, we just want to have somebody present at the gym, a lot of times the trooper says, yeah, no problem. I'll just modify my hours and I'll work a evening shift instead of the day shift to be there for the event. So it's really how you want to do it. Is from my stance. I don't know that there's a wrong answer, just that there really isn't a right answer either. You can, if there's an incident, you can Monday morning quarterback it all you want and find a way that you could have done it better. There's no guarantee that you're gonna have somebody working anytime there's an incident in town, regardless of where it is, whether it's a school or it's, you know, at a business. You know, you could very well have a SRO and have an armed robbery here at a gas station. So there's no guarantee to that. But I think the thought process of doing something is always ideal. And if you can do something that allows presence in the school as much as possible, then that's a win too. Or both. Right? In a perfect world, right? You do an armed security program and you have a resident trooper in town. Right? Money is always going to be the hang up.
If I could ask a question at this point. So just to level set where we're at and what the order is to even start and looking at what the different options are. Is it true that the bottom line is that it's a Board of Ed decision, no matter how you slice it, correct?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, to hire a resident trooper for the state, for the town isn't a Board of Ed thing. That's just a town.
Okay.
And then, like we had talked about, if the town and the Board of Ed sit together and say, here's what we're thinking, and if we can sell it to the town, if the town agrees to go with this, we'd like to put the office in the school that provides as much presence at the school as possible.
Is that the Board of Education decision as to whether or not they'd allow the office of the resident trooper at the school?
Yeah.
I would feel like it would be.
The town owns the building. The school board runs it.
Right.
So it would be up to the school board to
Oh.
say.
Are there many towns that have two okay, I know, I'm rainbows and unicorns, but are there any towns that have two resident troopers?
There's towns that have, I think, as many as 8 or 9 at this
wow.
point. Mansfield is, I think Mansfield's still the biggest.
And Killingly sort of started their own quasi.
Killingly is, yeah, it's kind of ebbed and flowed,
Yeah.
where they at one point had, and you might know more than I do because it might have been before I was there, but I know at one point they had 5 residents, I think. And I don't know if it was more, but they had 5. And at this point, they have 3 residents and they're hiring literally, they're in the process of bringing people on board right now. They might have 6 constables now.
Constables that are,
But they're on their way. They're also in the pipeline to start to almost, at some point, I think, branch out and have an independent
Yeah.
police department.
That's
I think is their
That's
game
what I was
plan
thinking.
long term.
That's.
Uh,
They had one there before, years ago.
right.
Well, they have,
Yeah, perfect.
it was one in Danielson,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Like
that's right.
1988. was it.
Yeah.
It was a police department, like Putnam PD. Putnam
Right.
PD only does the special service district, which is essentially downtown Putnam.
Mhm.
East Putnam and West Putnam is patrolled by the state
By the
police.
state.
So the Danielson PD closed up their doors in about 1988.
Right.
And then for the first 5 years, the entire town, including the borough of Danielson, relied on nothing but Troop D. Then in 1993, they started with resident troopers.
Mhm.
And then, as the lieutenant said, in recent years, they've added, local constables. They're police officers. It's just the term is constable when you're not
Because
an
they're
independent police.
armed,
They're, oh,
their
yeah, they're
constables are
fully
armed.
trained,
right.
yeah.
They go through the same certificate. A lot of them at this point are retired troopers.
Right.
But if you were starting new, they would go through the same, if you hired a 22-year-old that had never been a police officer before, they would go through the same training that anybody that worked for the town of Putnam would go through. They would go through that same academy in Meriden. Essentially, they're a local police officer, but because they don't have the structure of a police department in town, they fall under the resident trooper program. So
Okay.
we supervise some of it. It's a little bit of a strange balance because they fall under our policies for a lot of things, but then but they're town employees. So a lot of the administrative stuff is through the town, but the procedural stuff is based on ours.
Okay.
Could you describe for all of us what you know about the SRO program and what differentiates it from this resident state trooper? Because it's a little hard to follow because if I understand right, the SRO is a sworn active state police officer. Is that true?
Well, like I said, I don't know of a program of a school in the state where a state trooper is assigned to a school that's not, that didn't come from a resident trooper program. So trying to think of a town of a town locally that has one. I think Ellington or Summers but they have so many constables now. They might be constables at this
An
point.
SRO are you talking about that has an
They have
SRO?
SROs. Well, Killingly has an SRO.
Okay,
But the SRO is a constable for the town of Killing. It's not a
Okay.
state trooper. So
Okay.
an independent town that doesn't have a police department, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't have just a school resource officer that works only the school days and then goes home and is off for the summer,
Okay.
essentially. In the scenarios where it's a state trooper, again, I could be wrong. There could be something on the western part of the state that I'm not aware of at all. But the state schools, the state technical schools have school resource officers. But that's a different school system altogether. And then with that program, when summer rolls in, the school basically cuts the trooper loose from the school program and they go back to the barracks. Our trooper at Ellis Tech this year, because of the summer programming they did, they kept him for the majority of the summer because they needed somebody due to like summer classes and stuff like that. So there was a small period where there was no school in session and he was back with us. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks, and back to the troop on patrol. So I'm not aware of, I know what you're saying, and I think that what's happening is the traditional police department SRO position is somewhat getting lost in the structure of the town of Thompson without an actual police department. So for the town of Thompson to have an SRO, it would need to be a resident trooper specifically hired to be an SRO. Or, agreed upon with because I don't know how I don't know the process, like how the school would go about getting just a school resource officer.
So that
without the
was
town.
really my question, because we were looking at the Board of Ed, I don't even know if it's bylaws, but it says that for the purpose of the school resource officer means a sworn police officer of a local law enforcement agency that has been assigned to a school pursuant to an agreement between the local Board of Ed and the police department. So
Correct, but Thompson doesn't have a local police
correct,
department.
but isn't Troop D the local, because of the
Look-
same way Woodstock,
No.
how Woodstock do that?
Thompson, well, the state police patrol Thompson, we're not the Thompson police. And in Woodstock, they don't have school resource officers. They have armed security guards.
Okay, so they opted to, so what I'm trying to understand is because this is a lot to muck through,
Yeah.
right? So, the bottom line is that it doesn't have to be an SRO and it doesn't have to be a resident state trooper either. It could be a private, and I know, Greg, that you're not of the opinion that that's any good. And I'm not suggesting that at all, but I just want to understand what the different options are to the Board of Ed is what I'm trying to understand, because it appears that it could be any of those three. Is that true?
What is Woodstock Academy? So,
It's an independent school, they call
but it's a public school.
it. Not-
Woodstock Academy is a public
It
school.
was originally founded as a private school, but
Right.
it's a quasi,
It's a public
it's a
school.
quasi-public.
Oh, no.
It has a board of trustees and whatnot, but I don't mean what the school is. What I mean is their armed security
Yeah.
is not private and it's not SROs.
Correct.
What is it then? How's it designated?
Well, it's essentially a modified version of what you're already doing. It's the school security team that they.
They agreed-
They then
they
agreed,
agreed
that they petitioned, they presented to the town to say, put it to a vote. I believe it went to a
Did it
vote.
have to go to the
Yeah.
town?
'Cause the
like it did with
headmaster-
Woodstock Academy?
It didn't go.
It shouldn't have to go to the town.
I don't, maybe it didn't go to
Went
the town,
went
but
to
it
the Board of Trustees.
Board of Trustees,
voted
sure.
on it. Yes, we're gonna go for it.
Okay, they're armed security.
8 people. 6 of them are armed, 2 are
Yes.
not.
6.
Trained how? I kind of know this answer about these specific
I'm
people.
I'm not familiar enough with the model to.
Well,
answer
the
that
question would be, I've been under the impression that any Joe Schmo that happens to have their permit to carry doesn't mean you can be an armed guard at a school. So there's got to be some security, some type of,
Well, there's a
required
licensing
training.
process that they have to go through. I'm just not familiar enough with it to answer the question. And then
so,
whatever they do for training, that's something you'd have. to
I'm
check
not
with the
sure if
academy.
they're post-certified or what. I never got in depth, with Mr. Rich on that, but
but then clearly there are more options. There is. We don't have to have, now, just to be clear, I'm in favor of a resident state trooper and deal with armed security at school another time, and that's.
But
we
you
can-
want
we
to see
can-
the whole picture.
You know,
wanna see all
that's
the
why I'm
options.
asking these questions is to hear this. it sounds like you can have a resident state trooper be the SRO. Is there any other option for an SRO? No, it sounds like not.
Not as a trooper.
No, what I mean is, so SRO, school resource
You don't-
officer,
but-
correct?
But you can't,
Yes.
with lacking a Thompson Police Department, you can't have a police officer assigned to the school because you don't have a police officer. The only police officer you could have assigned to the school would be a trooper.
Correct.
Who would need to be a resident trooper in the town of Thompson in order to be assigned to the
and-
school.
And so we're saying a school resource officer is a law enforcement member. Is that what you're saying? It has to come from some law enforcement agency, otherwise you're not considered a, I'm just trying to find
Well,
out
I
what's
mean,
the definition of an
because-
SRO?
Because an SRO is just a term that developed out of through law enforcement, where they were embedded into a school because it became a resource for the school.
Okay,
The officer being, right, the officer at the police department, wherever that town is.
so whenever I hear about an SRO, we're talking about somebody who is a police officer in some
I
form
would,
or
I mean,
another.
I don't want to paint with a broad brush and say in every town and every community, that's what they call it. And they don't call it anything else because I would hate to be wrong, but to the only model
The
I
ones you
know.
of. Exactly,
at
that's
least
all
that
we
I've
can go
seen in the
by.
Northeast.
Right.
Is towns have a police department, they assign somebody dedicated specifically to stay in the school, they're very rarely pulled away from it.
Okay,
But they are members of the local police
well,
department.
just
Well,
the reason,
Putnam, Sean, has a police officer
Right.
assigned.
the reason
But
I'm
he also
asking,
has, I believe there's two,
They just hired some other
they hired two,
security.
well, they're armed, I believe like Chris, yes, yes. So I think Chris Tony is one of them. I talked to him a few weeks ago. I think he works like 1 or 2 days.
But aren't
To
they
fill in.
supervised by the police department?
Yes,
right,
Here,
I-
you don't have that.
yes.
I
We don't
understand.
have
No,
those.
I understand that. It's just, we're hearing so much lately, especially with
Yeah.
Putnam bringing them on and whatnot, about SROs. I just wanted to be clear that when I hear the term SRO, we're talking about a law enforcement officer, whether it's a state police officer or a town police officer that just happens to be assigned to the school. Just so that, I just want to be clear on that.
Another thing that might help this example is that I know the catalyst for this conversation has been school shootings,
Sure.
school violence, things of that nature, which is the first thing we all tend to think about when we're having this conversation. But just like the term suggests, school resource officer, there's a lot more
Absolutely.
that officer is expected to do. Case in point, I mean, I'm talking to a career educator here. I would imagine in a previous jurisdiction you worked at where you may have had a school resource officer, not only was that person going to be utilized if they thought there was going to be some sort of violence or God forbid, Johnny was going to come to school with a gun type of deal, but also if we had information to suggest that a student, maybe he'd been sexually assaulted by a parent or some such thing. The school resource officer is going to be the first person who sort of screens that. He or she may also investigate, there's a break, one of the students' vehicles gets burglarized. The school security folks at Woodstock Academy, and I think I can say the same thing for Greg's folks. They're not going to investigate those things. They're going to bring those matters to the attention of Troop D.
Right.
It's I don't know if that helps.
They're
Yeah, so-
limited.
A real SRO is gonna do a lot of crime prevention,
Law enforcement
intervention. Yes,
powers.
yeah, but like with us, I mean, we'll assist them with interviews of students and other things, but as far as investigating anything, I gather up as much intel as possible and pass it on to the troop and, yeah.
Usually, like last week, when they came on site, it became the police were managing what was happening next. So
It's sort of like, this is kind of a bizarre analogy, but a Millstone Nuclear Power Plant in Waterford, okay? Waterford has a full-service, full-time police department, but for obvious reasons, Millstone Nuclear Power Plant, because of, what that represents, they have civilian armed security. They are there to protect that plant from the types of things that could happen, terrorist activities, et cetera. But if a crime occurs, they're not investigating that crime. The crime will be investigated by, if there was an active shooter at the Millstone Nuclear Power Plant, they may very well go in there and bring an end to that even before the Waterford Police do, because they train there on a daily basis. But once the, the active shooter aspect is quelled, they're not gonna be investigating it. I mean, it's, I don't know if that's kind of what I see the Woodstock Academy folks
Right.
doing. They are there to essentially protect
Yep.
that physical plant, and more importantly, it's occupants, it's students, it's faculty, it's staff. But that's sort of where it ends.
Mitigate death. I mean, that's what they're there for, basically, in a nutshell. They're there to prevent loss of lives in the event that was to happen up there.
Can an SRO respond off school grounds?
Like well, I don't know the answer to that. It's gonna depend on whatever community is policing that.
So in my scenario for asking that, because again, we're trying to figure out best use of tax dollars.
Mhm.
We put an SRO at the school, resident trooper.
Yep.
But he's an SRO.
Yep.
And there's armed robbery at the gas station.
I mean, in a perfect world, if that trooper is working and we're able to get a hold of them and they're the nearest person, yeah, they're gonna probably go to that call.
Okay.
But
So
you
no-
can, but you can, as we described, you
Well-
could have a resident trooper at the school for an office,
Right.
but then still patrolling.
But in
if there's-
this example,
Oh.
you're talking about ringing a bell. Like if the bell gets rung and there's a cop nearby, the cop's going. It
My-
doesn't matter what
well,
the job is.
my example is if we, at the end of this, choose to say, put to the public, we want to do an SRO, which would be a resident state trooper, but an SRO, be at the school. The school is the priority.
Right, right.
And they say, so we don't get anything for it if we don't use the school? Well, no, not exactly. They're a resident state trooper at the school, they're the SRO, they're there, but this happens right there. They are right here. They're a lot closer.
They may get sent to it. The troop would pick it up.
Sure.
But there's a chance that,
Well, the
and
trooper,
again, they're not gonna get pulled out of the school to go to a minor crash, out on
absolutely,
West Thompson Road.
but I also was,
But if there was a tragic event that was unfolding and they happen to be the closest person, yeah, they probably wouldn't even be asked to go. They would probably just go.
and I understand that the troop would also respond, but that would be true if it was a resident state trooper. If there was a resident state trooper in that office right there,
Yep.
and there was a tragic event, I don't think the troop D would say, yeah, you go alone, we're not coming to cover you. You would obviously come and cover.
I mean,
So-
I think what you're asking is similar, is the question that we get often asked by towns that have resident troopers or are about to look at getting one. What if there's a resident trooper in Thompson and there's a call in Woodstock and they leave Thompson? Typically, no.
Right.
If there is a serious event unfolding in Woodstock
There's a school
and the
shooting
Thompson
in
resident
Woodstock,
trooper
there you
is nearby, we're going to send them because that's at the end of the day,
And-
that's their job.
And
if they're not doing anything-
Would understand that.
But that's few and far.
Yeah.
That's few and far. Like that doesn't
Right.
happen a lot.
Right,
You know,
but
I mean,
also-
we're not typically asking people to go outside their communities to do things unless they happen to be the closest person and there's a major public safety threat to either the public or one of our personnel. Right? We're not going to leave a trooper out there hanging because we can't have the Thompson guy leave Thompson. The Thompson trooper leave Thompson. But traditionally, whether it was a resource, a trooper assigned to the school or a trooper assigned to the town, the vast majority of their time is going to be spent in that location.
Right.
Right. And then there's going to be exigent circumstances that would require them to go off.
Right.
At the end of the day.
So I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor this, but I need to make sure that I do totally understand this. So what you're saying, Eric, I may as well, that a SRO must be a trooper, a resident.
In the
state
town of
trooper.
Thompson,
It would have
I
to
don't
be.
believe the model can work any other way because you couldn't have a law enforcement officer in this community
Okay.
that wasn't a trooper at this point.
Okay.
And we won't, to give you an example. Woodstock, I don't know if they still do, and I'm mentioning Woodstock, this has nothing to do with the armed security folks at Woodstock Academy. There was a time when I was the lieutenant at Troop D, there were a handful, 2 or 3 constables in the town of Woodstock. But we had, there's no resident trooper in Woodstock, so we really had nothing to, I mean, if we saw them, if they called us about something that they discovered, a crime in progress or some such thing or an accident, we would certainly respond and engage professionally with them, but we didn't provide them with any supervision because they weren't affiliated, with us, if that makes,
No, I get
if that
that,
makes
yeah.
any sense. So you.
You didn't govern them.
Exactly.
No, I totally get that. So I guess we're,
Sure.
Utilize, our constables in town.
I don't know enough about the constables in town, but the constables,
They're not trained at.
they're not law enforcement officers. I know that much.
Right.
So I know like in Woodstock, the constables, I think they still have a couple, like occasionally they'll be at one of the beaches in the summer checking passes.
So, we take constables and all the training?
I don't know that it's that easy because then there isn't a structure in place to support them.
And not without a supervisor for them to report to.
But if we went like Woodstock Academy, we went on security.
Yep.
They then report to.
No, because
No,
the
they don't.
Woodstock security reports to the Woodstock Academy. They're not law enforcement officers. Woodstock security, like to run a, yeah, Woodstock security to run like a parallel is like the armed guard that works at the bank. They're just an armed security guard. They're not a sworn law enforcement officer. So they work for their private company essentially, which is the academy.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, your folks are essentially the Woodstock Academy model.
Yeah.
It's just that none of your folks are armed.
That's it.
And your folks answer to the superintendent of schools. You don't take direction or supervision, or there's no governing from Troop D. There's certainly a strong working relationship with
Right.
Troop D, as is the case in Woodstock.
Right.
But your folks, whether you're armed or not, don't answer to Troop D, and the folks in just like the folks in Woodstock don't answer to Troop D. I imagine that could.
I could say if I was
Actually,
sitting,
one
if
of the models I would imagine.
I was sitting on the Board of Education, I would not want people who are in charge of educating kids to also become in charge of who's carrying guns. I mean, I just don't think that a school superintendent that has trained their whole life to educate people is now supposed to
manage.
manage.
Security.
You mean like the current crew that works for me, you want them to, hypothetically, you would like them to be, or all of us to be armed and report to, or be managed by Superintendent Melinda Smith. That's a lot of responsibility to put on an individual that's never been in law enforcement,
I
correct?
just think the liability there is,
What's that? There are people up there that have been law.
Just because you don't want to do it.
No, I never said I didn't want to do it. I just said I don't have the luxury of thinking about it right now because I don't have that tool in the toolbox.
So if we follow the Woodstock Academy model, we would hire a group security that were armed.
And honestly, that's where we have to start thinking about the cost. Because currently the Woodstock model has approximately 8 individuals, all paid an average of $30,000. Obviously, they're not working full-time. $30,000 a year, that's $240,000. On top of that, you have to arm them, provide the protective vest and protective equipment, send them to training, increase the insurance, which could be $20,000 to $50,000 more per year. And I don't put a price tag on it, but we have to look at the full picture. Additionally, from my perspective, that's a tall order to ask an individual. And it's great that if it's former law enforcement, that's fantastic. But you are asking these individuals to put their life on the line.
You also have to think about the liability.
Yeah.
to the town, to the school, to that person.
I think the
That-
presence
that would be
of a
cost more than
uniformed,
resident trooper.
and I think the presence of a uniformed officer always changes the dynamic. It it breeds respect. There's just something about that presence and, but that's my,
One thing with going back to touch on what Bill said. Going back to, we're using the Woodstock Academy model. And I know, Greg, somebody made the comment that having these armed school security folks answer to a civilian superintendent of schools is putting tremendous responsibility on the superintendent of schools. I think you're missing the point. For example, in Woodstock, last I knew, the guy who was basically in charge of the armed security folks at Woodstock Academy is a retired Yukon police captain. So I mean, this is a guy who spent a career in law enforcement in a supervisory and a command role. So he is certainly, it's just like, if I'm the head of public works, I answer to Amy. Amy doesn't have any background in public works, but it's Amy's responsibility to hire the right person to run public works, so that the public works guy runs his or her crew, and Amy just provides oversight as she would any town department. Same thing, I'm not familiar with the way that Woodstock Academy is governed, because it's a quasi public school, but the equivalent of their school board, I'm sure the way it works is they talk to the director of their armed school security, who happens to be this retired Yukon cop. And that relationship doesn't require the school board or the superintendent of schools having any law enforcement background, because they have a person in place, the head of the armed school security, that has that background.
Mike, is the person that you're referring to, the headmaster, or is he the head of security? Like, is he like the equivalent?
No, he's the head of, if Woodstock Academy has these 8 folks, their school security crew is comprised of 8 people.
Okay, so my question though is that they have a headmaster that's equal to a superintendent, if I'm
Okay.
right? That's not the same person that you're referring to.
No,
Okay.
of the eight school security individuals that are employed to provide that function at Woodstock Academy, one of the 8 is I don't know what his title is, but he is the boss of those folks, and he's the one who was a captain on the Yukon police.
So how is it different though, just from my understanding, how is it different that this head of security is responsible for the carrying of the firearms and reporting to that person that you're referring to from Yukon, and not the headmaster of the school? Is it because it's an independent school? Or why is that structure not something, like we're saying that we don't want Melinda to have that
I
responsibility?
didn't say Melinda.
Okay.
No,
He's just the security division, no more
No, I
than like the
understand.
English department has a head of English.
Right.
Security has a head of security, and then they just,
Yeah.
that structure follows itself up.
It's just like.
Okay, so
He
the,
had no engineering background. All he knew is he would give me things that he wanted done. I would just have my do it.
no, I get all that. I get that difference, but what I don't understand, and I apologize if I'm lost here, but the structure that we're talking about, when we said if we want to implement that in Thompson, that we would have to, that it would go, the armed reporters would have to report up to Melinda, right? Is that what we said? The persons that would be armed in this school would have to report to Melinda.
No, they would report to their head.
Somebody within, right
Okay,
now,
but what
Greg,
I'm
you are.
saying-
So here, let me explain it this way. Greg is right now, I don't know if I'm 100% right, director of our security.
Correct.
He's got 8 people that are walking around the school right now unarmed.
Yep.
We're gonna train them, we're gonna arm them, they're gonna still report to Greg.
But he's.
Greg then reports to Melinda.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about.
and my only point is, when you layer in all those levels, and then take in the liability concern, You could easily get 2 or 3 resident troopers to come here.
Yeah.
I've got a question about
And
Woodstock.
then take away that complexity.
And don't forget about the communication
sure.
piece where the independent security people that we have do not have access to your communication system.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to ever sell short security, but at the end of the day,
Now
security
you-
is only that until
Yeah,
there's an incident, they're gonna do what they can to stop the incident, whatever that might be, a fight in a parking lot,
Yeah.
something more severe, and wait until we get there.
But a resident trooper has, number one, has the law enforcement powers, also has direct access to dispatch.
Yeah.
Versus someone picking up a cell phone who's on the security team saying 911, we have an emergency.
I
here
think
at the school."
it's a tough decision to make because there's so many different ways to do it. You look at the town of Woodstock with 8 security officers, right? Not law enforcement officers. We still spend an awful lot of time at Woodstock Academy
Okay.
for things that rise to the level that require law enforcement intervention. Ellis Tech, 1 school resource officer, no security, just a school resource officer there. Killingly High School, or the Killingly High School. Well, actually, I think all the schools, technically, 1 school resource officer, even though they have 6 constables and 3 resident troopers, there's 1 dedicated school resource officer. There's not armed security walking around any of the complex.
1 SRO for all of their schools or 1 at each
One.
building?
No, 1 for all the schools.
Okay.
I mean, he spends the majority of the time at the high
High
school, just because that's typically where you're gonna see your bigger issues.
Right.
But again, like, let's not lose sight of the fact that we can, just because of the world we're living in now, right? Everything is under the cloud of, an active aggressor. But at the end of the day, what our school resource officers are typically doing is building relationships
Yeah.
with students, trying to put out the little fires before they become big fires with, students interacting with one another, trying to tamp down some of the narcotics that we're seeing in the schools, trying to prevent, through the DARE classes, through
Yes, I was just gonna.
talking about, drivers, driving safety, establishing good relationships with these kids so that when they're 13, they stay on that track so that when they're 18, we're not dealing with them out in a parking lot off school property causing problems, right? Because we've had positive exposure to law enforcement. And in a lot of these kids, you see, there's a lot of stories where you see the role model of that SRO impacting this child in such a way that years later they become
Yeah.
cops. So
That's it.
you don't want to minimize, what the potential could be, but at the same time, in all likelihood, what it's likely going to be is all these other things first.
I don't think we can compare Woodstock with Thompson. Woodstock, the security is at the academy. They had board of trustees. The middle school and everything has a board of education. So it's a completely different animal.
And I don't believe
Greg
anyone's
has-
down there.
Greg has a whole,
Don't believe anyone's down there.
No.
in security.
no,
Yeah, they just extended, security to the elementary public school, so there's a hybrid there somehow, there's some nuance there.
see, Greg guys have the whole complex.
Oh, yeah.
But what I
The
meant,
8 officers only have the academy.
right,
Well, they rotate, I'm sure.
Yeah.
but back to the trooper, Haglin's, point that, there's many different options, and that's where we gotta get to, right? Because each situation is unique, because Woodstock Academy has that situation, and they're in an independent school, and they have criteria that's a little bit different, that they don't have to follow. And the elementary school, the armed security was extended to the elementary school, so they have another way that they're accomplishing that. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, they're
But
right
it's-
across the street, so
but-
it's
but
right
it's
on the
still-
south campus.
They're totally public school, so they're under the state of Connecticut's Board of Ed and all of the state laws for that public school. So Woodstock Academy has slightly a different nuance to some of the, legalese of all of that. That's kind of my point. So my point is that every school is going to be unique, and the requirement, to your point, for the complex in Thompson is going to be unique for the size, the location, the situation we're in. So we need to come up with something.
I have to go, but I just want to concur what you said. It's all about building relationship and having that trust that person that they can trust. And that's in our experience, and I've been an administrator over 20 years, and I've always had the benefit of working with an SRO. And the trust that, the kids have in going to the SRO officer who, you know, teaches them about, you know, just spends that time and is dedicated to the campus is so beneficial. Like Greg is awesome, does a great job on team. But ultimately, if something's going down, you have to go to see anyway. You know what I mean? I agree with what you're saying. Like at the end of the day, when it comes to the budget purposes, right? It's going to add up. So you're spending all this money for this, but ultimately it's going that direction anyway. From our experience, I mean, you know, Greg is right on 6 point. Say, of the days.
1 to 7 days.
Yeah.
Up there.
But the more relationship building, studies will find that, you know, if somebody has that person to go to. And one thing about kids is they talk. So, basically what I have to say, but
Thanks, Kim.
thank you.
Tom-
Just to
Thomas?
go back when,
Oh.
you know, as far as what she just said,
Yeah,
I had privilege of going up there, and because I haven't been up there in years. My whole thing was because, you know, you've got 3 different schools all in one, and I wanted to, I mean, I would have got lost in there if I had to. But every
Yeah.
time he's going down and
I'm glad to hear that.
talking, going through the school with me, right? The teachers are, hi, Mr. Gill." Kids, hi, Mr. Gillard, how you doing? I mean, they already know him, and just that alone is a lot. Because they know who he is, et cetera. So do the teachers. There's something, he's right there. It's a school that I have not seen, let me put it that way, anywhere,
Yeah.
all at once, and there's ways to get in. If I wasn't with him, I'd have been lost, I probably would still up there.
Right.
It's true.
I'm with you too.
You've walked
Yeah,
it.
Tom. Thomas, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying, the whole SRO thing I think is excellent. I was speaking to a friend of mine that's actually state trooper as well. And, he said, you know, if there's an SRO in the school, they're trained in the security measures and lockdowns that the school does. So that's just another added benefit. Like you guys were saying, you know, they're knowledgeable of the students. They start developing relationships. That's excellent. That's going to, like you said, put out small fires before they become big. And, yeah, I think that's, I mean, if it's feasible, I think that's the better of the options.
At what point do we get to the crux of the question, which is, what's it cost?
Yeah.
What's it
Well,
cost for an
that-
SRO?
oh,
Well,
okay.
I'm not, I mean, not saying we're gonna
For
make
resident
any
trooper, not
decisions,
SRO.
but, well,
SRO.
Well-
Well, resident trooper who could be an SRO.
right? If we're talking about a resident trooper, full-time, 52 weeks a year, if we're talking about a resident trooper as an SRO, what type of numbers are we talking about?
Currently, it depends on the point in the pay plan of the
Mhm.
person that gets selected for the position. But generally, when you factor in the salary, the fringe benefits, you know, that the state has to pay for the employee, and then the equipment and the depreciation of the vehicles and all that jazz.
Yeah.
It ends up being like a range from like 130 to, I want to say 210,000.
And that's essentially strictly based on the price point of the particular trooper?
Correct. And like we had talked about on the phone, you can't necessarily say, we'll take the cheap one.
No,
Because we have to
no.
do a selective process, you know, a competitive process. So, you know, I
Do we
guess
get to
your immediate,
choose? Do we get to interview?
you could be, yeah, I think a lot of times the town managers or the, you know, selectmen are involved in the interview, but
Right.
it's a pretty objective process, right?
We
It's
kinda
it's
get,
a
like,
hard
here's your
scoring
pick.
matrix with, you know, this is the answer that we're looking for. These are the 15
Okay.
points that need to be hit because we're gonna ask a scenario-based question on a, you know, burglary. What are the steps you need to take, right? I'm just thinking like a resident trooper application. And there's these 15 critical answers, you know, these are the critical answers you have to have. You say some other things, you might get a, you know, half a point here and there, but these are the 15 you have to have, right? And that question is worth 15 points. The next question might be worth 15, right? So it's pretty well objective. And then there's another portion of it that takes into account the training experience of the individual, right? So that's another chunk of points. Ultimately, you end up with 100 points, you know, between that matrix, and then where the chips fall is where they fall. Like we talked about, oftentimes you might have somebody who's a little more junior, who on face value has to make up that little bit of seniority difference, but they come in, they do their interview, and their knowledge base knocks it out of the park, and they immediately jump over that gap that they had to fill, right? Because they had a couple extra points shy on experience or training. Other times that doesn't happen. You have inexperienced people come in and they give answers that inexperienced people give. So it's a little bit of a, sometimes you don't, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes, depending on your applicants, because we work with these people and you say, wow, that trooper is like very well squared away and they know really well what they're doing. It's not going to be shocking if they get this and beat out everybody else. And then you go through the process and you go, yeah, that's not surprising. Right? Because it all depends on who puts in for the positions.
So that number is resident state trooper,
Correct.
or now, if you're an SRO, you're not
Well,
52 weeks a year at the
No,
time.
it's
but you can't,
So how does that-
you can't,
So we don't get the state
can't
tech
shorten
school
that.
option.
No,
no. Well, no.
He's right.
No, and that's why I say I'm not aware of
put that-
I'm not aware of a town where they only have one resident trooper and that one resident trooper is in the schools for all the school year and then just in town the rest of the time.
Come on, you don't offer that program. Like,
I don't know.
Summer's off.
Well, it's a fair, it doesn't really
Tech
work.
schools
Get it?
The state tech school model.
Right,
In reality, I don't believe that that's sort of like a gentleman's agreement, because it's all state government. I don't think that
yeah.
I don't think at the end of the day, Ellis Tech is cutting a check to the state
Right.
police to cover for that person.
Yeah.
So you'd have to come up, if we went with a resident trooper, I'm pretty sure you would have to find meaningful work for that person when school isn't in session. Because I don't think you're not gonna get one
Right.
that you stop paying for
Right,
the 3
yeah.
months of school
Yeah.
vacation.
And that's why I say it would be, it's a strange sell to the town because what are we doing with, what's that other person doing that if the town is gonna, right, agree to pay for it? The tax people very easily say like, well, they're in the school 70% of the year, 75% of the year. And then the 25% that school's out of session, they're not there. So if I don't know that, like I said, I don't know that there's any place that does it like that.
Do you have a decent pool of police officers that are actually interested in being resident troopers? If
We have a
if a
lot of-
job opening. comes
Yeah, I
up?
mean, it's hard to say. A lot of it, comes from. You don't often know who's gonna put in for things, I
Okay.
guess, a lot of it is geographics,
Right.
right? If it's, we have troopers that drive up from Waterbury now, to, Waterford rather, to work, or Stonington and that area, so they're already driving 45 minutes to get to us.
Right.
Is that person gonna put in for a position in Thompson? Probably not. That being said, there's also, a large percentage of the people that live in the troop area or just over the line, that are, in a great spot in their career, that 2 to 5 year period where they're looking for opportunity.
Chaplain resident troopers, Thompson resident.
Correct.
Okay.
How would it play out, to your point, Greg, about off hours? Because we talked about, having one trooper, right? One resident trooper, right?
You don't mean unicorns and rainbows. I'm
Right.
saying 2 or 3.
Oh, okay.
Just saying.
Okay, well, I guess so.
No,
so
but
the
one.
same- One, right, so the same rule applies after school and for the other, extra curriculum, the meetings and whatever's going on at the school after the kids are gone.
Right.
We'd still be in that same situation if our resident state trooper came from Chaplin, he's going home or she's going
Well,
home.
Depending on the hours that we assign.
Right. Agreed,
Yeah,
but,
I
but
mean,
it's the same conditional bottom line at the end of the day, it's a
Right.
set amount of hours that they are.
But depending on
they're
the
hired
event
for.
too, I mean, typically the towns have an overtime budget that's also factored into this, right? Because there's always gonna be things that are going to occur outside of the regular routine schedule where that person's gonna work. So there's that, right? So you could say, oh, we're having the football championship game this weekend. We anticipate it being a very, very big crowd. We would, will you come in on overtime Saturday to be here for the football game? Chaplin just did it for their bicentennial celebration. They had like a big event down there and I think the lieutenant governor came and they were anticipating, a pretty good sized crowd for the town. So as a trooper came in on this I think it was a Saturday, came in on the Saturday on overtime for the day. They actually hired an additional trooper for the day because they were concerned that there could be enough people that it was gonna cause traffic issues at 198 and Route 6. And I mean, so there's always availability of other personnel. You can always hire more people, right? You can always throw money at the problem if you need people for a situation. But on face value, right, the schedule is pretty well set, right? Contractually, we can't modify it if the person doesn't want it modified, right? So if you agree to hire them and it's gonna be a Monday through Friday position, you know, there are ways that the schedule can be changed, but it just can't be changed next week. Next week, you need to work evening shift because they don't, at the end of the day, they don't work for the town. They're contracted by the town in essence, right? So there's contractual stuff that has to be met.
So how would we move it forward at this point to have the conversation, we'd have to lay out what the job description is for the resource, is that, and bring it to the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed has to approve that, not even.
Well, we would have to decide to move forward with something. Now, my second question, not to interrupt where you were going, but it popped into my head. Resident trooper. And like Greg said, if we were to, in the future, decide to arm some of our staff, would those staff at that point not only answer to Greg, but Greg ultimately answer to you, or not at all?
We wouldn't.
You wouldn't
supervise
touch
them.
it at all?
Nope.
Okay, but if there was an incident after hours, well, I guess.
But I'm glad that you brought that up, because in my mind, we still maintain the current security
Right,
team.
oh,
This is an
definitely.
add-on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Total right now, the budget is 90,000 for our security officers and about 52 for our coordinator. And the town pays, the town is paying 60,000 out of that 90 for the security officers. Those are the people that report to Greg, and the Board of Ed picks up the 52 plus the other 40,000 for
and that's just the
security.
budget, because technically the town pays for all of it.
Yeah, that is.
So that's
It's just where it falls.
It may be worth touching base with the town of Brooklyn,
Mhm.
right? Because they're a town demographically, from a law enforcement perspective, call volume is fairly similar. The types of calls are fairly similar. I know they don't have the high school complex, right, that you all have, but they have one resident trooper. And like I mentioned, their office is based in the school. So it may be worth touching base with the town and the school to say, how's that working for you? This is a new thing. This is relatively new this year. They've had a resident trooper for, I don't know, 15 years. Maybe a little bit.
30 plus.
Yeah, so this is a new thing that they've done this year, is they said, we're gonna move the office into the school. It used to be in the town hall at the corner of Route 6 and 169, and now it's in the in the Pomfret School, the community school. So, I mean, not the, I'm
Middle,
sorry,
is it
yeah,
the middle school?
yes.
It must be the
Brooklyn
middle
Middle
school.
School.
It is.
I was
Too
gonna
many
say.
towns and schools up here now.
It's okay.
But it may be worth talking to them to just see what their feedback is on that. And I know just from a call volume perspective, right, that Brooklyn's a busy town. So like I had mentioned, if they're doing stuff at the school and they get called out, or if they're at the school and they're tied up, we're covering that. So it may be good feedback to just say, how's that working for you? And what's that look like? Are you seeing the trooper in the school? Right? Because at the end of the day, it's one complex up here. So yeah, it's a big complex. But if they're saying, yes, this works really well, we're having a lot of presence because the trooper's here quite a bit, except for when he gets sent out to calls.
And we could find out
That's a
how many
little-
times he's sent
That's
out
a little
phone
bit of,
calls.
it's a little bit of
I can
feedback.
call the superintendent.
Patty.
We did meet the resident trooper and the superintendent during security training this summer. We asked them, at that time, but it was relatively new.
Right.
So I can ask her how it's going for this.
I just think
first quarter.
at this point, it's probably the closest model that might mimic something you might look at. Because you already have the benefit of a school security team in place, which they don't have.
They don't
So
have this.
you're, a step ahead in that direction. But now you're trying to figure out which direction to go with it. So they have they have the application of a resident trooper in their school. What does that look like? And what
Right.
sort of,
They only have
Correct.
That would be. Security.
But we still need that security team at the school.
With unarmed, with armed.
Even on.
So,
Oh, it's unarmed? No, but it would be armed if it was a resident state trooper.
Well,
well,
the
the
resident
resident
trooper
trooper
Well,
would be-
troopers always on.
Yeah,
so,
He has, he's armed.
well, the
He's a resident
But
trooper.
the resident- Brooklyn doesn't have the security.
They don't have,
No, they
then that's
don't.
why I'm saying that might be a good model to look at,
they
and
only
just talk
have
to
a
them
middle
because
school too.
you already have
They
the,
don't have a high school.
you already have the benefit of some physical security on site. So adding in a law enforcement component, you know, do you need more people to provide security on site? Or do you need, can the town benefit from having a resident trooper additionally? And have that trooper present at the school often? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. That's, you know, like it just seems like it's a,
For serving many functions. I mean, keeping a safety team at the school, which I think the safety team is fabulous. I like their presence when I go to various functions at the school. I just like to see them there. I think they're good. It's been a good benefit for the school.
With 68 external doors in that campus, it's a good thing they're there.
Right. But so a resident trooper would or could patrol the streets. I get calls constantly about
what?
patrol the
Sure.
streets, like
Like our resident,
speeding.
like our
You don't know
resident.
how many calls I
the
take
resident
on
that
any
we
given
have-
week.
The resident that we have in Chaplin,
Yep,
he's DARE certified, so he's in the schools all the time.
right.
Right, doing DARE stuff, or if they need some, you know, they want him to come in and do a presentation on
He
something.
doesn't have to sit in an office at the school
No,
all day
No,
long.
and then, you know, other times he's out responding to calls in Chaplin, or doing speed enforcement
Right,
because they
speed
want
enforcement
somebody to,
is- I
you know,
just
be
see it
present
all the
on
time.
whatever road because they're getting complaints. Or if it's, a lot of times what you see him do is the neighborhood, just like little neighborly disputes, right? They don't rise to the level of necessarily police involvement, but they can't be mediated otherwise.
Right.
Right? So now you have somebody who's got a rapport with people and they can call and say, hey, this, you know, loud muffler thing is still ongoing. Right? There's not a lot we can do with a loud muffler, but two neighbors just butting heads isn't solving the problem. So, you know, a conversation might say, hey, can you try to be mindful of the fact you have there's ways to mediate things that it's not always arresting bad guys and, you know, speed enforcement. It's great community relationships. And I think that's the value of it. So that's why I say where you already have a security team in place, the addition of a resident trooper may be a really win-win for the town, right? Police presence at the school, but also a benefit to everybody else in town too.
Can I answer? I don't mean to cut you off, Lieutenant. But with that, I think what people are missing too, and I talked about this with Melinda, and I discussed it with my father. And I think Mr. Darcy would agree with this also, is that with that one resident trooper in that town or in our school, if he was to go there, there's another hidden value to that. Not only, and Lieutenant touch base on it, the interaction, not only with a sworn law enforcement agent, right? But maybe the guy from this patrol area stops in to see him, how's it going, right? And what happens with that? Now we have two up there. It might only be for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but he's walking the hallways. He becomes familiar with the layout. And again, most of you don't understand how dynamic that building is. And to know that there are break doors and keypad doors that do cut off those certain locations, right? But to know the ins and the outs, and then 2 weeks later, Lieutenant Hagman stops up to see his guy. Master Sergeant Miller, Sergeant Cody, another guy, they're working evenings, the guy from evening comes up, the off shift guys come up and say hi to him, right? Because he knows everybody. Maybe a guy from town's on his day off that's never really been in the building. He pops up and gets to walk. With just a designated 1 or 2 resource officers or armed security, kind of like Woodstock has, but we're not Woodstock. Let's get that straight. But now they know the layout. And if they do need to respond, now they know the intricate in how the ins and the outs of that building work.
You know what, if I could I just want to say, sitting here and hearing how many times that I've heard it said that this is a very complex building and how there's 68 exterior doors and all of that, makes me even more committed to this project,
Yes.
okay? And what, I've been following the school shootings for a while in the country, as I mentioned earlier, and 43% of the shootings come from students,
From within.
from within, okay? And you guys, maybe, obviously you already know this, but to me, you know, this is a balance, because the resident or the, you know, thinking about penetrating the 68 doors and 68 doors in the school, but 43% of the shootings happen from somebody, a kid that went to school there and he got in. So that's, in my opinion, it's really not if, it's, you know, I'm a professionally trained emergency response professional as well. So I've had a lot of experience with this, and we plan for the, what do we say? We plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? You guys all heard that, right? That, you know, this is the trend here is not going down. And I know that everybody takes this very seriously, but you know, sometimes it can happen in Thompson. And I won't bore you with all of this, but not that you would be bored, but the statistics show that it's, you know, it's concentrated to our area. It's trending up and it's coming from the inside. And Melinda's shaking her head, so she knows all that and everything. I'm sure you guys all do too. But I didn't know it to that extent, okay? And when I hear the conversation about how complex this building is, it only makes me think that we really need to do something more
Absolutely.
now.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
That's, I'll just leave it at that. And I'm willing to be part of this committee and whatever needs to happen to help move this forward, however I can be helpful.
I'm curious, Mr. Gillot, the other one, but not
The older
you.
one?
You don't, yeah. Well, at the beginning, you mentioned that you didn't think it was a good idea to have a resident trooper's office at the school. Curious as to why.
He has an office, he has to, the way I look at it, is that it's an office. He can go around when he's not doing anything through the school, fine. But you don't want the school to believe that he's gonna stay there.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm telling you, because I'm on the finance board and was on when I liked it, but the people, other people on there didn't like it and they got rid of it. That we want to make sure that this guy is also doing things in the town.
Okay.
And see, and not let the people believe that, hey, you didn't do anything, he stays up there.
I mean, fair enough. Obviously, we all know the biggest hurdle in this town is always the budget. You know, the ridiculous things that get thrown out about the budget every year and the realities. If it's a resident troop program, you know, it's funded through the town. If it's an in-house armed security, it's probably gonna have to be funded through the school.
Well, it's still funded through the
It's still
town.
funny.
No, hang on, guys. No, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're all gonna say it's all tax dollars. The municipal
school's-
budget
the
right
school's
now,
Budget is looked at differently than the town's. budget.
everybody knows that. Let's not kid
But
ourselves.
it's the one, it's the
It's
one,
$1.
it's everybody's tax
I agree
dollars.
with you, but when it comes to privatizing school buses and the municipal budget benefiting to the tune of over 200,000 a year,
You're gonna keep bringing that up?
I am gonna keep bringing it up because it matters. It's perception of passing budgets. We know that, okay? It's
But
what,
let's also remember that if there's a budget that gets hit on the town side, it's always the public works. Because
Oh, you're
it's
right.
easier to hit that than it is to hit the school budget when it comes to cutting it. But now we're digressing. We'll have that
but we're not. We
conversation
need to
later.
figure out if we want to do this, how
I
do
know
we
where you're
present
going
it
with
to the
that.
taxpayers?
And what is the
Well,
best
The better
appetite?
When I was on the board and we
You're
were
right.
privatizing the buses, it didn't matter what we said. Nobody understood that $200,000 that was coming off the municipal budget. Nobody understood it. And so the following year, when it came time to readjust the budget and they went right back at the school, and I'm like, whoa, we just took on $200,000. We saved the taxpayers money by doing that. We saved them money by privatizing and they didn't care.
And we also weren't keeping up the buses.
Well,
That's another
But
story.
we saved
Yeah.
money
Right.
and they didn't care. All they saw
Well-
was, how can we cut the next year?
It's not what you save, what you spend everywhere.
Well, what
No.
are we gonna do? Do we have to make a PSA about kids getting shot? Like, I don't understand.
Well, no,
No,
but.
I think
but-
Sean's just making sure that we can whet the appetite of the public and make sure that everybody's happy with whatever decision we go with, so that it can actually pass budget wise.
Again, as I've said,
Because if you only do the security team and you arm the security team and it hits the school budget, correct me if I'm wrong, that budget's going to be scrutinized more than if we do a resident trooper that benefits the entire town.
Well, the thing-
Is that where you're
So,
going with
no, but
that?
you have, the other thing you have to understand is, when it comes to the school budget, there are things you can't cut.
Right.
Okay, you can't. The state in its infinite wisdom has yanked funding from special ed, but required you to do it. I agree we need to do it, but it has to be funded. The law says it has to be funded. The law doesn't say we need armed security. Okay, so if we want, and again, remember, how many school shootings have you heard where teachers cover the kids to protect the kids and the teachers die?
Almost everything.
Everyone. I'm married to a teacher. So don't for a minute think this isn't important to me and I want them safe. At the end of the day, it's still always about the vote in June and how we best utilize the money and present it to the public. Because 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, when there hasn't been a school shooting and they forget about it and they want to cut the school's budget, and unfortunately, the school is stuck paying $10 million for special ed, where are they going to cut? I mean, there's only so much money to go around. And so that's what I'm concerned with, is how we not only present it to the public, but ultimately how it's funded. And if it's funded through the municipal budget, it is usually looked at in a different light. And that's just a fact. If we want to admit it or not, we've all been following these budgets for
It has
years.
to be marketed real well.
I hate that fact. You're right. I hate
hate
that
it too.
fact. Yeah. But I think we can move forward with something.
But one thing before we move forward, I think we're all.
I said with something.
Yeah,
We're not there yet.
we're all
We're not there yet,
and-
but we
and,
will.
You know, and I think one of the ways I like to look at things is we need to come up with sort of what are our priorities?
Right.
And then we need to take those priorities. You need to put those priorities in what I like to call a need to have category and a nice to have category. Need to have, I would argue, need to have is protection of life. Okay, nice to have is dare. I'm not a big dare advocate, believe it or not. I think dare is something that is long outlived its usefulness. And you'll probably be very surprised to hear that come from me, given my background. But at best, dare is a nice to have category. I know that the young lady who left a few moments ago talked about the positive relationships between a school resource officer and a student. Again, that's great. That's nice to have.
Sure.
I'm far more concerned about protection of life. And the other thought is, and again, I was a resident trooper. I think it's a great program. But one resident trooper, two resident troopers, three, even if you had 3 resident troopers, the reality is the 3 resident troopers are rarely, if ever, going to be working at the same time. So at best, on any
Right,
given
one.
school day, you're going to have 1 resident
Right.
trooper in town. 1 resident trooper in town versus school security that is to at least some degree armed. We'll call it the Woodstock model. That arrangement is going to be far more effective at protecting life in the school than 1 resident trooper on duty who could be on, Quatictown Farm Road near the Rhode Island line with a vehicle stopped. So I mean, those are just, I'm not even sure that we know the next, I understand that once we as a group, I imagine you envision us as a group
Presenting to the board.
coming up with what we think is the
Right.
best idea for what is going to best suit the needs of the town. We understand that whatever that might be, there's going to be a price tag attached to it. And it's going to need the town's approval. But before, I think it's real premature for us to be coming up with any ideas as to what we want to present to the town, because we're not even
Right.
close to united on what we think is in the best interest of the town right now, in what are our priorities? Because I think talking about, there's certainly talking about school security and talking about a resident trooper, there is a relationship there. But there's also to some degree, it's almost apples and oranges as well.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's one thing that I wanted to keep focus on, is that the task here is security for the kids at the school and the teachers, not just the kids, obviously, it's the teachers, everyone that's up there. And if I think what we should do is lay out, what are the options? What are the different configurations? Maybe there's 3 ways to do this, and we break down each way so that we can see it. Like what if we went with the Woodstock configuration, what does that mean for people, money for the school and for all of that? If we go with SRO and with the resident trooper, and do a side-by-side compare on it and see what it looks like for the money, and then have some roundtable conversations about that too, and break that down, because there's going to be different criteria that applies to each one.
Amy, do you know, I know Putnam went out to the voters and asked a question, right? Do we know what questions they asked? Did they give the voters options? Like, I don't know. I do know they went out to the,
I think
out
they
to
were
the
options.
citizens.
I think it was like it was like options on the ballot, if I remember reading about it. Like,
What?
yeah, there was like this model or this model essentially.
So establishing what those couple of models are to put out to the public to see what the town of Thompson.
And did they do it as a vote,
Yeah.
like referendum?
Yes.
Okay, because I
But
think
they-
that would be important.
But
Do it
what
that
they
way.
did different is that they knew where they were getting the money from. They got it out of the
Yeah.
the burner. They had it in the kitty, right? So that swayed the vote, because it didn't cost them any.
Residents voted for, I don't know, commercial and industrial, tax revenue. Gee, that would be
It was a
nice.
different- Yeah, it's a whole different,
You got a point.
different scenario, so.
What do we get from LB's?
Or G7 catering.
Yeah, right.
Not much.
Does everybody like that one-way on-ramp right in front of, Doc Waldron's property? If we really want to go old school, early 70s, we should have had an industrial park over there off of Route 193. Okay, now I'm just picking on my dad's generation.
Ain't gonna
So-
work, pal.
So,
Right now. Okay, I've been through what you're doing. I've been through what you said. I was on that. They didn't like the people that I worked with at the time. That they got rid of it. They don't like what I had to say, but I don't care. I'm back, right?
So my job is gonna be to check with Town of Putnam on what options they had on the referendum.
Yeah, I think all I remember talking to the superintendent was it went out to the citizens at the end of the day.
So, and then we have to get back together and put together our options.
But that was,
What are our options?
were there questions on the ballot after they had already pretty much said option A is this and it'll
Right.
cost us this, option B is
Yeah,
this, it'll
that's
cost us
the way
this,
we should
which
plan
ones
it.
do you want? And when you pick one, we're doing it.
Right.
Is that what, oh, okay,
I
that's
was
what they
just,
did,
yeah.
okay.
It was the majority.
What do the people want?
And I think we know, because if there's any confusion in the room right now, I think we know
Mhm.
the options, price tag aside, the options that are available. We can have a resident trooper. We can have several resident troopers. Again, the more you have, the more it's gonna cost.
Mhm.
You can, I don't want to speak for Lieutenant Haglund, but if the town of Thompson went with a resident trooper and was adamant that resident trooper be dedicated to the school during the school year, we would probably honor that. State police would, they would probably honor that. Again, whether that, so, that would be an option.
Right.
And is that an option?
And then-
Dedicated, is that as an option that it's dedicated, the troopers dedicated to the school?
Right.
Yeah, it's just how it would play out when they're not in school.
That would be an
Summertime.
SRO, that's a resident trooper,
Right.
right, we said that.
Aquatic during the summer.
That's what I thought.
And then the other-
There's a long discussion about that, though, that I've had, that it's
You
not
can't go to
technically.
Aquatic, that's NCOMs.
Okay.
NCON said they would allow it. I talked to Colonel Lewis. However, Mr. Darcy told me that, well, it's really not the town's jurisdiction.
Well, it's
But
not the
we've had
town's, it's not the
such-
town's responsibility.
It's not
We-
our
Yeah, we
responsibility.
should not, we should.
It's you're enabling,
Exactly.
you're enabling the system to not, to
Right.
fail us
Okay, that makes
in doing that. So
But
I
then-
love, I
and
love
then-
the
and
idea.
then
too.
Another option would be, taking Greg's folks and, in arming Greg's folks, to an
It's another
extent.
option.
That's an option.
It
as
is.
well.
I have a couple questions about that particular option, though. One, could that be? Is it crazy to think that that option could be under the supervision of the first selectman
I am the
Inst-
chief of police.
instead of the superintendent?
You want that job, Amy?
I'm just asking. You know,
Can
could
you-
the
can you
school's security
Or the Board of Selectmen.
be under the
Within
guise of, oh, right, the Board of Selectmen ultimately, but could the school security? It's town building. Right?
I don't think again, I'm retired from the state police, so I don't have any authority, but state police wouldn't have.
Oh, no, I don't,
They wouldn't care.
But there again, that whole program comes entirely under the town budget at that point, potentially. With the approval of the Board of
Gee,
Ed allowing.
I hadn't thought of that.
That was good, John.
That's my point.
Does
Yeah.
that
If it's
shift, does
under-
that shift the security, the whole security team
That's what I'm
under?
asking.
That would be.
Could the
what would happen.
security team be under it's another department in the town?
See, why not? But I think what we.
Because then you also potentially cover town events.
That's not a
As
bad
it
idea.
grows,
And
Right.
I
maybe
think
even
what
the
we-
constables
what
could
we-
be baked
have
into
a
that
couple
somehow.
Constables that somehow go through the necessary training,
What we don't want to lose sight of, though, is
protecting the
The-
school.
the school security folks, assuming that they become armed, the school security folks are not going to,
they're not.
fall under the responsibility, the governance of a resident state
Right.
trooper.
Right.
We knew that. So
Right.
that being the resident
Right.
trooper, not an option at all, that
That's-
it's only arming the security team.
Basically, I'm just
Woodstock.
creating another town department.
Like Woodstock.
I mean, I think you can, I certainly think that,
Because the liability will fall to the
But
town.
those are the costs that we really have to zero in on. It's easy for us to say that the resident trooper program, yeah, it's 130 to 210,000 per trooper.
Mhm.
Harder, we need to dig a little deeper so that we really know what the cost would be to beef up our safety team, our security team,
yeah, I would have, I mean, I
and
would have.
keep them
yeah.
trained and outfitted
Wouldn't
accordingly.
Woodstock be a good model for that or a
We
good
would-
resource?
we just
They
go to
would
them.
help
Yeah.
them.
We know what
You
it
kinda
costs
know.
them.
Yeah.
We know what it
But I'm
costs
still
them.
curious about the training and the equipment and those costs, because I don't think we have those detailed.
No, I
completely.
didn't get the specifics on the training.
And I think that's where that's where it's gonna become
Because I
a
would
little
assume
bit more costly.
with that model, even if they're, no matter who they're managed by, the ultimate liability, if there's an
The
issue,
town.
is the town's. So if it's ultimately the town's liability, then it should be run by the town officers, in my opinion.
As long as the Board of Ed approves that.
Right. But essentially, obviously, they're gonna report to you. Okay, the director is gonna report to you on a daily basis, his office is gonna be there. But then a monthly report or whatever to the Board of Selectmen. Essentially, just, this is the upper, management.
Right, your folks, again, we keep talking about the Woodstock model because it's the closest one that we're aware of in a bordering town. It's kind of the Woodstock model, I think, works fairly well because the head of the group there and several of his security members, the head is a retired Yukon cop, and there's 3 or 4 retired state troopers there. And they all went right from their law enforcement position, they
Right into
retired
that.
and they went to Woodstock. So they were, their training was all up the whole 9 yards. your guys, would they, in your opinion, would they be appropriate people to be armed? Would they be comfortable being armed? Would they, are there some, could you have somebody that says, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed on for? Because it's a totally different thing. If you're a school security, if you're an unarmed school security officer, there's a different expectation as to what you will do when what hits the fan. If you're an armed school security officer, I mean, unlike what we saw in Texas, you should be, you should be right there in the thick of
That's
things.
a hard question to ask people, but it'll be asked by me.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, right now, I'd probably.
Say again? Yeah, okay.
Right.
Well,
That I would
keeping,
trust my life with.
Yeah.
keeping in mind too, not every, I mean, right
But
now.
is that individual,
Right.
again, that I know that I would trust my life with him and his with mine. Tired.
Mhm.
Willing.
Yeah.
At that point, right?
Mhm.
So, and then what type of pool of people do you get from that? afterwards?
Right.
In a typical day, you've got what, 4 walking up there, walking around up
3
there?
during the day.
3
2
during the day.
including- And then me. 3,
Right.
And then at night, 1 in the evening.
So I mean, especially, look, this started much smaller. I mean, this is a
Ma-
growing.
Modeled after how Woodstock started
this,
theirs.
Right, this is a growing program. Well, I think most people would be happy if we could just snap our fingers and say, starting tomorrow, two of you are gonna be armed.
I looked on Indeed the other day.
You know
just
what I
to
mean?
Find
It's
out
better
where the
than
state
nothing.
of Connecticut fell for the average SRO. And I would assume that those are retired individuals, right? They call them SRO. They use those terminology loosely sometimes. But for armed security, the average mean, we're 7th in the country at around 50,000 per individual.
I'm not even talking about a cost factor. I'm just saying the idea that you would keep one, what you mean is you trust one to be armed, but that doesn't mean that you can't have, 4 armed, 2 on at a time, and 4 that aren't armed. I mean, I will tell you that the way the program has grown to what it is now. Okay, so I have quite a reputation for bringing my wife coffee. Okay, let's just say I spent a lot of time up at that school prior to COVID.
Yeah, we heard all about it.
Yeah.
You didn't bring me
Now-
coffee yesterday when I was working at the poll, so thank you
I
very
didn't
much.
know you were gonna be here.
Sorry, you could have left.
Could have left and come back, you're right. It is definitely a different environment up there today than it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm always seeing the red shirts. I'm always seeing people walking around there. They're outside so much more. And that matters. I know how secure the building is. Yes, there's 68 exits, but guess what? There's also 175,000 panes of glass. I've always been of the belief that you can't stop crazy. We're only gonna go so far. And still, we don't know that we're gonna stop something. Okay, and I'm not saying we don't try, but having a secure building, well, I think you also reduce the number of doors. Yes, because I might have heard a couple complaints from friends
I'm sure.
that have to walk a lot further now with their classes.
But it's
But
good program.
But you reduce the number of doors that are actually accessible to the staff.
Bill did that, and that
So-
was a good move.
And again, I don't think people realize how secure the complex is. It really is. Not anybody, I mean, I know I get harassed when I go up there. And that matters,
Can I go back? I'm sorry, but I do have to go back. It's the inside that bothers me. It's
No,
the kids. And
get
I
that.
really feel like where we're at today, I hear what you're saying too, but I really think that the only way, it's not a matter of if, things are gonna happen and it's escalating.
Well-
Okay, let me just, if I could, just finish my thought. That you can only stop a firearm with a firearm, in my opinion.
Yep.
And that's that. I'll just leave it
They're
at
gonna
that.
be trained
And-
too.
But they have to be trained.
And they have to be-
Absolutely.
But most of all, not only the training, They have to be willing to lay their life down too.
Well,
And it's hard to find an individual like that, even
Well,
where we're at in this day.
But I'm just saying-
With a troop, with a resident trooper or a SRO?
President Trooper knows that gonna lay his life on the line
Well, that's what I'm saying.
sometime, but he's talking about armed security.
You're talking
That
about
is
you-
hard to, it's hard to get into the mindset of an individual that is might be retired or
But why wouldn't it just be a requirement of the role of the position?
to lay your life down on the line.
Yeah.
That's not a definite.
That was a
You can't say-
requirement
you-
Well,
in
it is for the-
Texas. They didn't, and they didn't respond. You never know.
I
You
know.
just don't know.
You don't know,
You don't
that's
know.
right.
That's what I'm getting
That's
at.
it.
It's
Right.
a hard,
Time comes,
it's a hard answer to find in somebody.
right?
Unless you've worked with those individuals for years and years and years, right? And out of all the years that I worked, and I'm sure Lieutenant Haglund and Major Darcy, there are probably some ifs in there too, reality of it,
Then
okay?
back to
We don't live in
Texas.
a perfect vacuum where everything, we know what's gonna happen, right? You're right, there's a wolf out there, and we don't know where that wolf is. It could be anybody.
And let's remember,
And
if you're at the high school, Greg, and you've got, I don't care what you have a bazooka on you, and that kid comes in the elementary school. Look, again, my point is that we're gonna put out there what we think is best. That doesn't, you still just hope.
We
Yeah.
had last year, state police brought up, I believe it was 7 dogs and there were 2
Oh, there's
supervisors
like
there. So there
10
were a
dogs there
total
that
of
day,
9 troopers there, right? And I'll give you this scenario. They were started in the high school. And I assume most of them had other weapons in the vehicle. We were in the high school. If something had happened, right, in the middle school or the elementary, you know what the public opinion would have been? You had 9 bodies up there and you couldn't stop it. One's not gonna stop it right away. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7.
Depends on where.
Unless you get down there immediately, unless it happens right in front of you. So there's no definites with
Oh, I
this.
understand that. I
And
totally get it.
I don't,
I just wanted to stress that, 1 or even 9. Now, would it have mitigated a lot more death? Yes, but still death.
well, right now we're working with nothing, so I think
Yes,
we gotta get
correct.
something. At least something.
We need
Take an
something.
example.
But where does it get proposed and what do we agree with?
and I need to say this as a superintendent of schools, and I don't want to take this discussion down a rabbit hole. But when you put out a statement that 43% of the active shooters come from within, or they're a past student, we fail to forget that the community has not supported adding mental health providers in the school system. And the reason that we have some additional mental health people right now in our schools is because the federal government gave us grant money. At the end of this year, there are 2 critical positions that are at a funding cliff. And those positions are critical to support the students that have mental health issues. I can tell you as a superintendent of schools since last year, the amount of threats that have come from within and that we've had to deal with, and we've had to put a lot of mental health support around, we've really utilized those dollars. And so I know members of the Board of Education are like, well, wait a minute, do we support mental health or do we buy guns in schools? And so there's that dynamic. The reality is we need both. And so let's not forget that we're putting security in place to combat an active shooting incident, but yet there's still a mental health need of our students on the campus. So I don't want to take the conversation that way, but I can't sit here and say that we're going to put all our dollars into having armed security and then I'm going to have to cut these mental health providers to make that work.
No, I think they both go hand in hand.
But then again, we're gonna have to sell that to the.
Who-
So, go ahead, Thomas, did you want something? Did you want to poke in?
No, I think that just like the whole, like just, forgive me, I'm ignorant about all this stuff. I'm completely new to this. I'm just in this because I care about my son and the students going to the school, obviously. So I'm learning as I go. I just keep hearing this sell thing. How are we gonna sell? How are we gonna sell it? It's like, for me, it's just like, we don't want the kids to die. Like, we need something to protect ourselves from a danger. I don't know why, like, it's so hard for people to understand.
I couldn't agree with you more, Thomas, but when did you move to town?
I just moved to town a year and a half ago. So again, yes, I'm completely ignorant on all of this stuff.
Hey, I've said it a couple times today. I'm unicorns and rainbows. I believe in offering the
Yeah.
best to our students. I believe in making sure that our town is maintained in a way with infrastructure and big projects that will keep the town looking beautiful. But at the end of the day, when it comes to budget season, sorry, Larry, that Board of Finance is gonna cut things to make the budget pass.
So then how does one sell this?
It's not.
To get
He's
to
got
the
a question.
people, you have to, go through the,
Board of Ed, Board of
Board of Ed,
Selectmen.
right, and then Board of Finance, and I'm gonna go back to when I was on that one. There is a person, right, that was on there, that is on this one. Okay? And when it came to getting rid of that, there was others that
The trooper program.
that we had.
Right.
And got, getting rid of it, I was for it, and I think I might have been the only one. Okay, I mean, person is back like I am, and I just, gotta get it past them to get, or, yeah.
But I totally, Thomas, believe in protecting our students, providing the best for them, including mental health.
Yeah.
But it's always that hurdle, and it's always, one year the budget didn't pass until November. I believe it was 5 referendums before it would pass, and we whittled it down to nothing to get it to pass, so that there wouldn't be a mill rate increase.
And I whittled down everything we could as far as support structures, as staffing wise, to make that budget work that year.
That was a tough one.
That was a
So
tough.
then what can we lean on? Can we lean on the old traditional fear cells? Do we start compiling statistics and this and that, and
Thomas, make sure you and all your friends, people come out to vote. You have to get people out to vote,
Yeah.
including parents from the school.
Our
I
parents
just don't know that many people here. That's the hurdle.
don't traditionally come out and vote.
Yeah.
We know that.
I mean, we've said it. How many families?
We have, well, probably around now, families, probably around 800 solid families
Okay,
that have
so-
2 kids in the district, but
So
there's
800
900.
families times just 2 parents, and we know nowadays it's usually there's more than 2 parents. Okay, that's 1,600 people. Typically, we get 500, 600 to come out and vote for the budget. So just out of the parents in the school system, you're lucky if you get a third of them to show up to vote for their kids' school budget. And I don't even think you get a third, because I know plenty of people who don't have kids in the school system that come and vote for the budget. And I hate to be a doomsday guy. I mean, I've lived in this town my entire life. I love it. It's why I'm still here. I raised my kids here. And the town sucks when it comes to supporting programs in this school.
Well, I think Thomas got a little feel for that when we went to
The security meeting.
And
Yeah, I was like,
I
oh,
was gonna touch base on that, and you could share with everyone else too here that there was
Yeah, right.
4 staff and 14
Was it 14?
Right,
individual
Area
parents
three?
or groups of families that came out.
right. 14 people showed up, 600 showed up to disband the P and Z, and about 600 showed up to, rip the P and Z for guns.
So school
And
security.
14 people
in my
showed up
opinion, at that
For school
time,
security.
and it was put out by Melinda Smith to the town.
Oh, yeah, oh, that was shocking.
In defense of the townspeople, the gathering to disband the P and Z, the gathering, no, let me finish the gathering with respect to perceptions that's
Second Amendment.
ability to shoot on one's land was gonna be impacted. That was incredibly well advertised, not through official advertisement, but it was all over WINY, it was
Sure.
all over Thompson Transparency,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. So people were aware of it and they showed up.
Yep.
You're talking about.
Okay. We need that. How do we get that?
But we can do that once we know the direction.
My
Yeah,
point is,
yeah.
this meeting that recently occurred, and you're dismayed by the fact that there were only 14 people there. Well, I'm a very engaged member of this community. I had no idea that that meeting was going on, and I imagine that most of my brother and sister residents didn't know that. So I mean, it's
That was for school parents,
right? It was
yeah,
for
it was
parents.
promoted for parents.
But you also,
I didn't know about it.
you also have to
Right,
remember, second Monday of every month, pretty much, okay, with some exceptions. For the past, I don't know, 20 years have been our Board of Ed meetings. Nobody ever shows up. Okay, if you don't know that they're the second Monday of the month by now, it's because you don't care. And that's what I mean, it's not a secret of the lack of support in this town. It's not, I mean, light a fire under somebody and tell them you're gonna take away their guns and they're gonna show up in droves. But tell them that we need armed security at the school and they're gonna say, wait a minute, my taxes are going up $10.
Well, I
It's sad.
think we need to position this better, like the people like guns and like shooting all that stuff. Why don't we position it like we're protecting our turf, we're protecting our youth,
Well-
the bad guy versus the good guy. People can get behind that.
I think that would be the plan. Do we all want to meet another time to lay out? I'll get the information from Putnam. We can lay out what the options might be. Give us some time to just
Yeah.
sit on this and think
Yeah.
about it.
Did you finish your thought when you were laying out the three, or did you have any others that you
I
thought
mean, I
you
I
had?
believe it. I mean, I
You
know.
said resident
and
trooper,
I'm not
multiple
We,
troopers,
resident trooper is certainly an option.
multiple troopers,
Or multiple resident troopers is
Right.
certainly an option.
arming Greg's team.
Arming Greg's crew or arming part of Greg's crew would be an option. And going back to the resident trooper option, we could, if we wanted a resident trooper in town and the town decided, the thing is, the resident trooper is going to, is gonna, the town would advise the commander of the barracks, we want this person patrolling the town, or we want this person dedicated to the school. The commander of the barracks isn't gonna be taking, he's not gonna be taking a phone call from Amy saying, I want this, and taking a phone call from you saying, I want that. That's something that the two of you would have to work out. So I mean, that is an option as well. I think those are the three.
Yeah.
Those are the three options. Am I missing one?
No.
I think you can do both. You could arm them and a resident for the town.
Oh, yeah, that,
Well, that's.
yeah, or any, or
It's a little bit of a-
we look at the options in those options. Those options wouldn't have to be enacted individually. We could
Do a
take-
hybrid of it.
we could couple some of those options.
Along with the existing security that like Brooklyn doesn't have.
I'll contact Brooklyn for you and get that information, see how it's working.
I think.
And I
what
was
you
gonna
have to do-
contact with Stock. Get costs, yeah.
Okay. You have to go with this out, not just for school, okay?
Mhm.
Because you're not gonna go anywhere. I mean, this is life and death here, we know that. You gotta go, so we have a trooper, right, for the whole town. And if you wanna put them up there, that's fine, and then the rest.
What if,
Because you're gonna get more people, I would say, to come out and vote. If they say, oh, the school again,
right.
you know what's gonna happen. They're not even gonna come out to see what's going on.
How
know
comfortable
about-
would, Greg, now I'm assuming you're referring to Ross as the other person. How comfortable and how would it work if just the two of you went through the training and were armed? And would you be comfortable with that? You don't need your whole team. I think your whole team's fantastic just the way
Yeah,
they
no,
are.
I totally agree. That's an
So,
option too.
so if you can find out from Woodstock
I'm gonna get the
a, a good breakdown too, though, because, one of our options might be because I think I agree with you as to how we need to approach, putting
Getting
this,
the money to pay-
putting this out there. But either way, if we do what Putnam did, which is option one, option two, option three, whatever, to the townspeople. But I think one of the options might be, again, we're growing the program. So if we can get just 2 armed security along with a resident state trooper for the town
So that would be.
that has an office up there. That, exactly, you're protecting the town and you're protecting, and so if 2 of the security team are armed and the resident trooper's office is at the school, that's a pretty good start. I mean, we've already started. It's a pretty good next step, I think.
I
The
think
only thing you gotta bear in mind about, it's just the 2
Yeah.
is, so if you begin with only 2 that are armed.
Yeah.
Well,
How do you split it?
you know, they're not, there's gonna be a day, you know, what if they're both out sick
Yeah.
that day, or they're on vacation, whatever the case may be. Now, all of a sudden, it's that day where the two that you have armed aren't there.
And that's why I had mentioned that
Right.
earlier,
Yeah.
Darcy.
But that's
I
gonna
mean,
be
they need,
the case.
it's not always 2, there's always gonna be 4 or 6 or 8. Because there's gonna be vacation, you gotta think of all those things, it's not just a robot, you're not putting a
Yeah.
robot up.
But we
there.
know without a doubt that it's not perfect and we have to iterate.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
because
I
it's never gonna
agree,
be perfect.
but right now we have 0.
Yeah.
So if next year we could
Yeah.
have 2,
Yeah.
and maybe the
Yeah,
next
2
year,
is-
2 more.
We gotta walk before we run. 2 is,
That's kind
2 is definitely better than 0.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
And I would imagine, I don't wanna, again, we talked earlier, we know that your folks, because you're not active law enforcement, you don't have, you know, investigative authority, but I've got to imagine that you and your crew have a relationship with the kids. You know who the kids are that are troubled, you know, hey, we gotta keep an eye on this kid, you know, so there's, and I'm sure that those kids know that. I mean, I would like to think that if if I'm an Adam Lanza, the Newtown shooter, if I'm an Adam Lanza and I'm attending Thompson schools, I'm probably gonna be a little bit more wary, in the presence of you and your team than I would have been several years ago when your team didn't exist.
Right.
And the other thing too, kind of like putting the ADT sign on your yard without having an alarm. I'm assuming that we don't plan on telling the general public
Who's
who's
not,
armed.
Yeah,
right.
And so if we're not lying, let's just play this game out. We're not lying when we say, look, security staff now has 2 armed security members. Nobody knows which 2.
Mhm.
So if we're talking about the 43% that are in the school, those kids don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Gilloff's not here today. Yeah, well, he's not the one that's armed. You know, they don't know. And so there's part of that too, you know? And again, don't get me wrong, 4 is better than 2 and 6 is better than 4.
We know, the thing, we all know that, you know, I certainly didn't make this up, but like that famous cliche, let's not allow great to be the enemy of good, you know? Instead of focusing so much on, yeah, ideally, we want a dozen ex-Navy SEALs who have who like to read to children on the side.
Now, I'm not that much into unicorns and rainbows. I'm not thinking that. So I'm just
But I
saying.
mean, it's, yeah, let's, if we get hung up on the ideal, yeah, we get nothing.
There is no idea.
Start down
Yeah,
here
right.
and build it
Build
up.
Yeah.
But I mean, personally, I've wanted a resident state trooper for years, long before the discussion of security at the school. And so I think, I don't know, to me, it's a nice mix if we could manage to get both, even if it's
And I
only
think
2
what you're
armed.
doing that way, right, not just one up there. Here. Gonna make the people say, well, look, it's not just them, we got somebody that's taking care
Right,
of
and
us.
I think,
And you're gonna, because there are people that, oh, it's the school, forget it, just get that out.
so I think like, you know, like you guys, Fred and Darcy. I would love a helicopter. I would love 50 cows positioned on 4 or 5 points in those corners of the building, right? But that's not gonna sell, okay? And again, we don't have a large I don't believe you have a large revenue stream coming into the town, correct? That's the foundation we're starting at. very weak foundation. We gotta package this right. I would love to have resident trooper or two, one to the town, one to the school. But again, that's like you just said, you like what? Rainbows and unicorns, right? Again, it's rainbows and unicorns. We can get a rainbow, not getting a unicorn, right? So the rainbows only come once in a while. But I think the best sell, from my perspective, sell it to the town. Best bet would be to go with a resident trooper. Start small. See where the funding goes.
Add the layers,
Yes,
add the layers.
I think it would be an easier sell. I would love to say, have you all vote yes and say, hey, Greg, we're getting 2 resident troopers or 1, and we're allowing you to hire 2 armed individuals.
Well, how about if we put it to, as one of the questions?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
We could have those models.
Right. Because I'm hearing the opposite, that in my circle and everyone that I've sampled said they weren't for the resident trooper. They would vote for an SR or dedicated to, I'm just
I'm
saying.
just curious why. Do you ask why?
No, I don't know that I did, because
Because
I,
I get called-
past
I get
history,
called a lot,
and I know you
people
told me
tell
that.
all the time that
But
they
that's what
want
I'm saying.
resident
That's
troopers.
why I don't know what the real appetite is,
I
but
think from a law enforcement perspective, this town is well overdue for one.
Yeah.
Oh,
We have
sure.
We have a high volume of calls in this community.
And I think with,
And I think at the end of the day, I think almost every town should have one because I just don't, the staffing just, the call volume is not reasonable for the staffing that you're getting. And from a community safety standpoint, I think you have a lot of, you have a lot of new community, new family members in town, new houses in town, new construction in town. As rural as it is, right? Houses are still going up.
Only.
I don't think a large percentage of these people even realize they don't have a police department.
Mhm.
Because I know in my own experience, having worked this
Mhm.
patrol for many years on evening shift, I would go to houses and they would say, are you the resident trooper? You don't have a resident trooper. Oh, yeah, we do. No, you don't. Or new people that have just moved here and don't realize that they moved into a community that doesn't actually have a police department.
Thomas,
Which
did you?
scratches my head because I'm from Massachusetts where every town has.
Well, and that's what I was just
I
gonna
was gonna
say.
And they said, oh, I didn't know we didn't have a police department.
Thomas, did you know we didn't have a police department when you moved here? Because you came from Massachusetts, I
Um,
think.
I did know that we didn't have, because
Oh,
I had friends that lived here before. But I knew
Okay.
about Troop D though, so it was kind of like on the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So I think there might be a little education aspect to that too, to residents and especially newer.
Did you
residents.
know you don't have a police station?
Like, and we go to Putnam still, like East Putnam, and you go out there and they say, why did you show up? Why not the Putnam Police?
Right,
And we
they
have to
think.
tell them, like, well, the Putnam Police doesn't come out here for you.
Right.
And so there's a lot that's been lost and it's very, very bizarre. I live in Woodstock and I talk to Woodstock residents and they say, they think Woodstock has a resident trooper. No. Like, I live in town. I know we don't.
I saw how the resident trooper worked before at the school. There's an issue up there. I got called up there, my other job. Trooper was up there, probation officer up there, and we worked with them in the school. This kid made it. I mean, because the resident trooper was in town and he was called and he went. And he was just the resident trooper. He didn't work at the school. He had the office down here.
Right.
So, he worked at the school too.
If you put one just up there, he's gonna get people go up there with not, asking him bunch of dozen questions or giving him, hey, this guy would do something, somebody's breaking into my house. And that's what he's gonna get not every day, but that's what's gonna happen. And then the people are gonna say, well, shit, if he's gonna be up there, he's not talking to these guys, he's not gonna help them out. Why do we have them?
And they're not gonna have access to them at the
Right.
school because the school is locked.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, that was the problem we had with the state. They did that. All the time. Doing the deer program, that we didn't do any traffic. Nobody did anything about speeding on Quonic Road. Nobody did anything about speeding anywhere else. When we had a resident trooper, they go to them, we never had time. That's why people are here, because it's like, why are we paying for it if we don't have any use for it? Because all he was doing was doing care.
No, you know, one of the other resident troopers we had. Somebody got at my house. We called them out, came out on a Saturday. And that was a resident trooper. So I know he did other things besides being in the school.
Yeah, I don't believe everything about, I mean, you're saying that you're almost saying that they didn't do anything, and that's not true. I live here, I was a cop here, I knew all the guys that there till we got them out. I happen to be the only one that said we don't want to get rid of them. And, so for them to say, for you to say that,
That was
I just
the
do not
perception
believe
from the
that at
Larry.
all.
Larry, that's not my perception, that was the perception of the town. That's
in what way?
people-
Because they got rid of them. That what you're saying?
That's why they got rid of them.
They did it wrong.
Because it comes down to what we already talked about, that one individual can't be everywheres all the time. To say that he was always at the school, it's like when you get in an argument with someone and you say, you always do this. That's an exaggeration from the public who didn't want to spend money on the resident trooper anymore. So,
Hmm.
They were out there investigating, I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
That
but
was
they
my
can't
mind.
be everywhere and they can't stop
Exactly.
every crime.
It's a big town, there's one
Having
guy.
security, armed security at school might not stop. It just hopefully will mitigate loss of life or prevent some deaths. Because that's what it's all about, but it's not gonna be the answer, and we know that because we've already touched on that.
I would expect, if there was a resident trooper in the town, and frankly, again, I view my role on this committee differently than I view my role as a taxpayer. We may present the town with a variety of options. And I'm gonna walk into the ballot box and I'm gonna pick the option that I happen to think is the best option. Personally, I think if we're gonna go with a resident trooper, I think having a resident trooper in the town initially, that's something that I would be more supportive of than having a resident trooper, dedicating that resident trooper to the school. However, I know if I were the resident trooper in Thompson, probably the first person, when I took over that position, probably the first person that I'd be introducing myself to, and I would make sure I had his cell phone number, he had my cell phone number, would be Greg, because I would view him and his crew basically as my eyes and my ears here at the school. And I would be very comfortable with these guys dealing with as much as they could deal at the school and giving me a heads up when they need, official law enforcement responsibility. And that relationship, and it sounds like, this thing that went down here a few weeks ago, it worked well because you had a relationship, excuse me, with some of the folks from Troop D. But that relationship would only be that much stronger if it was a resident trooper who would be working with you,
Totally
know,
agree.
on a
And it
daily
wasn't
basis.
just that incident. There's been numerous occasions where I get calls from teachers, my staff, what's going on? There's a trooper up there, he's parked in the parking lot. I said, I don't care, don't call me on it.
Yeah.
They're up here, the last time I checked, that hill
Right.
is still in the part of the state of Connecticut in the town of Thompson.
Right.
So that's in Troop D's
Right.
jurisdiction. They're up here just because
Right.
Lieutenant Hackland told them that they
Right.
want presence up
Right.
here. And that has been on at least a few times a week. Sometimes it'll go by a week because they're busy, but whenever they do get a chance,
I'm 82 years old and I have to go and I'll be right back. I can't stay here all night anymore.
But I do, well, I'm not 82, I just lost my train of thought, that's great.
I heard that,
I was backing you up, I let.
That's something.
No, I was gonna say, I'm sorry, yeah, let me get it out before I forget it again. But, I do though, as a taxpayer, and also as somebody who, I've lived in this town long enough that I think I know a little bit about pulse of this community in the way, our residents perceive things. I would not be, I wouldn't want to see a resident trooper spending an inordinate amount of time at the school. I mean, I think that, I would, we would want that resident trooper to do the impossible, which is to be, to be in a million places at once, but traffic enforcement is key. I mean, it's patrolling the town, preventing burglaries, things of that nature, mediating neighborhood disputes, that type of thing, dealing with some quality of life issues. And I do think if at the end of the day, we go back to having a resident trooper, and that resident trooper is perceived to be spending 50% of their time at the school, that's not gonna be well received by the townspeople, because, and that would be great if there was no other work for that resident trooper in town. But the reality is, like Lieutenant Haglund, there's more than sufficient. If the town of Thompson didn't have any schools, there's more than sufficient work in this town to keep a resident trooper busy. Patrolling, traffic enforcement, investigations, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
What's that?
Dirt bikes and.
Bikes and four-wheelers up and down the road at all hours of the night. I mean, I like that I live in the country near
Yeah.
trails, but man. About to
But-
throw some spike strips out.
Talking about the needs of the town and how it's inept in having that kind of support doesn't address the reason we started this conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
School security. So I'm gonna keep coming back to that. And thank you
Well,
for
that-
coming because you bring so much to this committee.
But that is why, and I'm gonna shut up after this, but that is why I personally, I would be far more, I would, going back to my need to have, nice to have categories, I'd rather see a couple of his people armed at the school as soon as that can happen. I'd like to see that before we have a resident trooper. I think that's more,
The
I think
critical
that's
path
more
quicker.
of the critical thing, and I think that's why we're here. That's just me.
Your opinion is very important to this group, and your suggestions. It's complex, you know? We all
I
know.
agree with Mike. I'm a couple of ex-state troopers.
As this has grown, the important part is also the personnel up there. I mean, you know what the personnel was the first year. And then the second year. And now, what's this, year 4 or 5? Okay,
It has evolved to a very professional group.
exactly. And so, as we're saying, now, next step. And maybe that next step is, again, if you only have one person right now and you don't even know if they would want to take on that role, okay, but we're evolving. So we advertise, and I mean, Woodstock, again, I had heard the same thing, Whalen. I'm sitting with him at the security meeting and he looks at me and he goes, it's the most secure school in the state. They've got 3 retired SWAT, and yeah, but they didn't have 3 retired SWAT year 1. Okay, and so I agree. I still would like to see personally, and that's why I said do a little more detailed breakdown of per person from Woodstock. Because
It's
My-
30K salary, that I know.
well, but it's, again, first of all, the average of 30,000, we know that's not what the director's
But
making.
it's part-time.
And it's part-time, right? We need to get, all those numbers, but to me, right now, like I said, I would love to see 2 armed and a resident trooper. Because we do have problems in this town. We all know, yes, this was maybe prompted this time for school security. But I also, as we keep coming back to that, I actually got a kind of pit in my stomach thinking, man, that's a lot of eggs in one basket. Boy, we're like, yay, we got armed people at the school. I'm still coming back to, okay, doesn't mean it's gonna stop anything. So let's not put all and I don't know. I want armed, but I want security up there. I want the complex safe.
Want quality. Everyone
And-
wants quality.
Yeah, and I'm just, I agree, stopping a, a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. If they're there in the right spot, in the, what is it? How many 100,000 square foot complex?
I don't know, Bill can tell you that.
Yeah. And at the same time, if we're here and it's the time to put it out to the people, why not make the town a little safer too? Why not protect life in our town too? Right? If we can do both, let's try to do both, not with 5 resident troopers and 10 armed guards to start with, but maybe someday when Amazon builds up off the highway, then we're good, but
Well, the current major threat right now is, I mean, things are happening in schools. I mean, this is the new wave. I mean, that's why I think the focus is,
respectfully disagree with crime
Okay.
everywhere. No, I mean, don't get me wrong, again, you're saying that we don't have crime everywhere?
That's.
no,
and
of course we do. Of course we do.
I digress too much, but from your point of view, you said you have a 4th grader.
Yes.
John and I and a few other people in the room, our kids have already out of school, not that we don't value it, but
Hmm.
you're coming, that's your heart right now. That's your everything. For us, we want to be safe I know you have a
Yeah,
wife
I
in
got a wife
school.
there,
You're right.
I got a wife
But for
there.
some of the elderly, they want to be protected in their homes.
Yeah, no,
So
I
we
know.
have a large elderly population, so that's, you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I'm not operating solely off of emotion here. I mean, I understand the statistics very well, and I've been tracking this for years now, before my son was even born. So that's, I mean, so I mean, there is Troop D, right? And that they are responding to the town calls and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah, I'm
But
just
it's not the
saying, why
same
can't
as
we
a
do both?
dedicated
That's
Police
all.
force in your community.
I'm just saying, why can't we do both? Why can't we put that out as an option? That's all.
right. Well, I think it can be an option.
Right.
Yeah,
We should put it out
absolutely.
there and then come get together and then break them down even further a little bit. And then, so that we can, firm up the options presented.
And I agree. Yeah, if you asked me to pick, I would pick arming school officers first. But maybe we can get both.
No, it's just that when you said both, I just immediately defaulted back to the biggest elephant in the room, which was like the budget. And I'm like, well, if we're asking for too much, we're not going to do anything, are we? That's kind of what, I don't know. I'm just working off what I'm hearing. That's all.
Well, I think that's why we put out options.
And I think that's why
Yeah.
earlier too, Thomas, Sean was saying that this new security department comes under a new department within the town.
Yeah.
And yeah, so town security, town/school security, which could include a resident trooper as a line item. So,
Mhm. That's it.
but
Right.
May I ask, how would you get that options out there? What method would you use to get it out to the people? Because I know we talked about having just like
social
polling.
media, radio,
No,
You're
would there be
saying
a
it would
vote?
be on a referendum.
for the vote, and
Oh,
then we
would
have
be
a town
referendum,
meeting
okay.
first, so then you have to have
Right,
the
it's a
town
town
meeting
meeting,
to
yeah.
move on to the referendum, to
Right.
adjourn to the referendum,
Okay.
so.
But I think, and I don't have any experience serving on town finance committees, any of that type of thing. I can just envision the daunting challenge that getting any of these things approved is going to be. And I guess my thought is, and I know I promised to shut up earlier, but I just contradicted myself. Are we all in agreement that the very first thing we want to do is at least a couple of folks at the school? Take the security team that already exists and take the necessary steps to make sure that there are a couple of people there that would be appropriate to arm.
As the most immediate
Yeah,
response
right.
to where we're
You
at?
have to hire.
And that would also happen, that's also going to happen to be the option that happens to have that's gonna have a couple of things. Is that not the most pressing priority? We also know that that's gonna be the least expensive option.
Well, we think it's
I
going to
think
be.
it's gonna be.
And it also needs a Board of Ed approval.
Yes.
and there's 9 members on that board, and I can tell you that their opinions are mixed. So there's that dilemma right there, as to how they would respond to that.
So that might be important between you two. What's that?
Board of Ed's gonna counter, no matter what.
Maybe, that's what I was just about to ask. Between the two of you, can somebody figure out? Is there a state statute, state law?
There's a state law that says only the Board of Education allow, people.
Okay. In that case, we have to find out if it can be under the purview of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, they have to vote to allow the weapons into.
I understand that, but we just need to know if we're gonna present an option to the public that we can actually do it.
Well,
Yeah.
what I would like to do at this point is adjourn the meeting. Meet on November 30th, if everybody check? It's a day, there's no meetings that week, it's after Thanksgiving. It's a Wednesday as well.
Works for me.
Yeah, it's usually nobody has meetings that day, November 30th, and you don't have to come back. Thank you for coming and spending all this time with us.
Yeah.
much.
I like conversation. I like hearing options.
What time? 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, I think, unless people want to go earlier. Larry, you're 82, do you need to come here earlier?
No, you're gonna have a break for me, okay?
As long as you use the bathroom, it's set.
What's the matter with you? I gotta walk.
You want to do 6 o'clock?
I think so.
Does everybody maybe
6.
want to do 6? I wouldn't mind 6. Okay. I'll get the facts that I need from Woodstock. And I'll talk to Putnam about what was on their referendum. Melinda will talk to people from Brooklyn.
And I can call Chris Sanford tomorrow.
Who is that? Is that
He's the headmaster. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and just maybe gather some, then have him just,
Or Greg and I can take a trip out there and speak to his security. You want to come? Yeah, speak to their
And we
security
probably need
people.
to-
itemize.
Woodstock's gonna be a little different because they are not, I think, as you pointed out, it's not technically a public school.
Right.
So they may not be bound by some of the, the bill referenced the statutory requirement that a school board has to approve armed
Definitely,
individuals
right.
being employed by the school. That probably isn't the case.
They only have their.
At
board of
Woodstock,
trustees.
So we need to research that. We need to research that statute and confirm that what he's saying is correct. I think it probably is.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and make sure that we're compliant there.
And the other person that you need to include on this committee is Kathleen. Yeah, she does need to be here. She's done a ton of research around this. She's probably tired from yesterday anyway, but I think she would be the person that would be appropriate to bring back that information to the Board of Ed.
Yes, so I'll ask her for them to come to the next. meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any value to reaching out to the Woodstock Elementary School that's not under the independent criteria?
Yeah, I can talk to that superintendent.
There's something funky or
I'm-
wonky with
yeah,
that.
I'm sure
because
Chris
it's-
knows how it
Right.
works over at
But there's
Woodstock,
something,
but
there's another nuance to
Yeah.
them.
Somebody's gonna reach out to Brooklyn too.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm gonna do that. I'll call Patty.
You mentioned Chris Tony at Putnam. Is he's not a police officer. Is he
No.
armed security though?
I believe so. Okay, I just saw him recently. You mentioned that he was doing it. I only know what I saw in the news.
So he's not working for Putnam PD?
What's that?
Did you know Chris?
He's a retired
Yeah,
trooper.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think I don't know, are they paid by the school or are they part of the PD?
They
I
are
don't-
part of the
I
PD.
thought
I
they-
heard them on Winnie.
Yeah.
And I think the officer, a Putnam police officer was with one of the
Okay.
two. The second person wasn't on the show, but they were reporting to the police department.
Now, I know we're gonna break up, but do we need to prepare something for the Board of Ed for the next meeting? Because we said we're gonna take it offline and then, we're gonna have to bring something
I don't think
back,
we're gonna
right?
have any facts for them. Their next meeting is Monday,
Oh, okay, but even just,
After November 30th, we could plan for
the
that. second-
December meeting.
Yeah, and we'll have Kathleen involved too, so we can kind of have a nice presentation, hopefully. Very good.
Good talk.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for all your input. It was excellent.
Hey, thanks for
Thanks,
your-
Thomas.
Thank you.
Relax, right?
Well, the worst things in the world than sitting around a table and talking. Oh, especially if everybody's being decent.